James Stewart wasn't the most conventionally handsome man to ever grace the silver screen, nor did he possess the kind of overwhelming charisma that would make you notice him the moment he walked into a room. Yet he was one of the most liked and admired men in Hollywood history, and the reasons are more wholesome than you'd think. He was relatable. You know how some old Hollywood guys had that larger-than-life, almost untouchable vibe? Like, Cary Grant was charming, but felt like he belonged in a penthouse somewhere sipping champagne with royalty. James Stewart? He felt like the guy who'd help you fix a flat tire, then walk you home just to make sure you were okay. Physically, he didn't scream movie star in the traditional sense. He was tall, yeah, 6'3", but kinda gangly. He had this slow, stammering drawl, and his expressions always seemed just slightly bewildered, like he was processing the world in real time. But that was exactly the magic. He was real. Watching Stewart on screen felt like watching your older brother, your best friend, or the guy at work who always gives solid advice but never brags about it. Take It's a Wonderful Life, for example. That role of George Bailey, total embodiment of the everyman. He wasn't trying to conquer the world, he just wanted to travel, do something bigger than himself. But life had other plans, responsibilities, family, duty, and he stuck around. You could see the weight of those choices in his face. Every man watching that movie saw a bit of himself in George. The sacrifices, the quiet dreams, deferred. And when George finally cracks and breaks down on that bridge, whew, that's not acting, that's life. But Stewart wasn't just relatable on screen. Off-screen, he was exactly the same. No frills, no Hollywood glitz. He wore the same beat-up hat for years, drove an old car way past its prime, and once famously refused to upgrade his kitchen appliances because, in his words, they still work just fine. Can you imagine a modern celebrity saying that with a straight face? He also stayed in the same modest Beverly Hills home for decades, and not the gated, gold-plated kind. We're talking about a place with neighbors who actually knew him, saw him out on the lawn, said hi, and chatted like regular folks. Another great story? One time, a young actor asked Stewart for advice on how to make it in Hollywood, and Stewart told him, "Be yourself, don't act like a star. People don't need another star, they need someone real." That's who he was, a star who didn't act like one. And ironically, that made him shine even more. So yeah, he wasn't the slickest or flashiest guy in the room, but men loved that about him. He made being decent, humble, and genuine look cool. And let's be honest, that's something all of us secretly hope we can pull off too. Selfless wartime hero. See, when World War II broke out, a lot of Hollywood stars found ways to contribute, selling war bonds, doing USO tours, posing for morale-boosting posters. All honorable stuff. But Stewart? He wasn't interested in just looking patriotic. He wanted to serve, and not as a mascot, as a soldier. Here's the kicker, he was already one of the biggest stars in Hollywood when he enlisted, fresh off hits like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and The Philadelphia Story. He had an Oscar, he had fame, he could have stayed in California, done radio shows for the troops, and everyone would have still called him a patriot. But nope. Stewart joined the Army Air Corps in 1941, and not as a publicity stunt. He actually trained, earned his wings, and became a bomber pilot. And get this, when they tried to keep him grounded because of his celebrity status, he fought to get sent into combat. Literally fought to be put in danger. The man wanted to do his part, not just play the part. He ended up flying 20 combat missions over Nazi-occupied Europe, often piloting B-24 bombers, which were basically giant flying gas cans just begging to get shot down. He risked his life again and again, leading squadrons under intense enemy fire. And when it was over, he didn't come home shouting about it. He kept it quiet, humble. That kind of service didn't need a spotlight. After the war, he stayed in the Air Force Reserve and worked his way up, eventually becoming a brigadier general, one of the highest ranks you can get without making the military your full-time career. That's not honorary, that's earned. Men respected him for that, deeply, because James Stewart wasn't just playing heroes in films like The Glenn Miller Story or Strategic Air Command, he was one. And unlike the Hollywood tough guys who only pretended to be brave, Stewart had seen the real thing. He was the real thing, and he never boasted, never tried to cash in on it. When people brought it up, he got shy about it. That humility just made him more admired. I mean, how do you not look up to a guy like that? His friendship and loyalty. This guy wasn't just a good friend on screen in movies like Harvey or It's a Wonderful Life. Off screen, same deal. He was the kind of man who, once you were in his circle, you stayed there. He wasn't flashy about his relationships, but the loyalty ran deep, and that said everything about the kind of man he was. Take his legendary friendship with Henry Fonda, for example. Two Hollywood giants, both tall, both stoic, both class acts, and yet completely different politically. Stewart was a conservative Republican, and Fonda was a staunch liberal Democrat. They argued all the time, but it never broke their bond. When things got heated, they wouldn't shout. They'd just grab a pair of model airplanes, sit on the floor, and quietly build together in silence until the mood cooled. Tell me, that's not the most wholesome bromance ever. They were roommates early on in their careers, and they stayed friends for over 50 years through fame, marriages, wars, disagreements, you name it. That kind of consistency in Hollywood, where friendships usually last about as long as a lunch meeting, that's rare. And Stewart wasn't just loyal to his friends, he was loyal to his values. He stayed married to his wife Gloria for nearly 45 years until her death. In a town full of serial divorces and flings, Stewart's marriage was legendary for its devotion. He once said, "Gloria was it. That was the decision. I never looked back." A one-woman man through and through. He also had a tight-knit group of collaborators he kept going back to, directors like Frank Capra and Anthony Mann, who helped shape his greatest roles. He didn't bounce from crew to crew, trying to chase trends. He worked with people he trusted, people who got him, and that trust showed up in every frame of their films. Even in the military, where he could have played the Hollywood card and floated above the ranks, he bonded deeply with his fellow soldiers. He didn't just bark orders from a distance, he flew with his men. He led by example. That's why the guys who served with him respected him not as a celebrity but as a comrade. So, yeah, when people say men admired James Stewart, this is a big part of why. He wasn't just a good guy on screen, he was a good guy. The kind you could count on, the kind you'd want in your foxhole at your dinner table or standing beside you when life got hard. He aged with grace. No midlife crisis, no trying to stay cool or compete with younger stars. He didn't dye his hair jet black or squeeze into tight jeans and pretend to be 35. Nah, Stewart let time do its thing, and he wore it like a boss. In a town obsessed with youth and reinvention, Stewart stayed exactly who he was. He didn't chase relevance. Relevance came to him. He went from the idealistic young man in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington to the world-weary, rugged older roles in films like The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance and Shenandoah. His characters aged as he did, more complex, a little more grizzled, but still full of that moral backbone and quiet strength. And that hit hard with men watching him, because let's be honest, aging can feel weird for guys, especially when the world starts focusing on the next generation. But Stewart made aging look cool. He showed that getting older didn't mean fading away. It meant gaining weight, depth, gravitas. His face got more lined, his voice got raspier, but somehow that made him even more commanding on screen. He wasn't afraid to play roles that reflected real-life aging either, like in Anatomy of a Murder, where he played a seasoned lawyer, smart, no nonsense, a little rough around the edges, but sharp as ever. Or in The Flight of the Phoenix, where he's not the cocky young pilot, but the guy who's been through some stuff and has to dig deep to survive. There's a quiet power in that kind of portrayal, a kind that tells men, you don't have to be young to be strong. You just have to be real. And even off-screen, Stewart never pretended to be part of the new Hollywood scene. He stayed true to his values, true to his friends, and never got caught up in chasing trends. He did a few appearances, some interviews, and toward the end of his life, he even read poetry on talk shows, including a heartbreaking one about his dog Bo that brought Johnny Carson to tears. No acting, just Stewart being himself. That's the kind of aging men respected. Not the kind where you're trying to cling to your 20s, but the kind where you own your years, your wisdom, and your wrinkles with pride. So yeah, James Stewart aged like fine whiskey, smoother, deeper, and more impactful with time. He was true to his beliefs. If there's one thing James Stewart never did, it was sell out. In a world where fame often messes people up, where cash and clout tempt even the best, Stewart was a rock. He had a code, and he lived by it, both on screen and off. You know those actors who take any role as long as the check clears? That wasn't Jimmy. He turned down stuff all the time if it didn't feel right. Not because he was snobby or out of touch, but because he had a clear idea of the kind of man he wanted to be, and he wasn't willing to let Hollywood twist that. Even his movie characters reflected this compass. Think about It's a Wonderful Life. That wasn't just a role, it was basically him. George Bailey is selfless, kind, struggling with the weight of responsibility and quietly sacrificing his dreams for others. Sound familiar? That's so Stewart. He brought his own decency to that character, and you felt it. Every man watching that movie could see a little bit of themselves in George, the feeling of being stuck, worn out, but still trying to do what's right. Then there's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, another guy fighting the good fight, standing up to a corrupt system, trying not to lose his soul in the process. Stewart didn't just act these parts, he believed in them, and that made men trust him. He became a symbol of what it meant to be good, strong, and principled, even when it wasn't easy, and he didn't just play clean roles either. When he took darker turns in films like Vertigo or Winchester 73, it was never just to shock or chase awards. Those characters had real inner battles. They showed how even a good man can be tested, tempted, and torn apart. That moral tension made his performances richer, but you always knew where Stewart himself stood. Off camera, the guy didn't fall into the typical Hollywood mess either. No scandals, no tabloid drama, no headlines about wild parties or public meltdowns. He lived in the same Beverly Hills home for decades, stayed married, stayed grounded. He wasn't perfect, no one is, but he tried to be a good man. And in Hollywood, that's rare air. So when men looked at James Stewart, they saw someone who didn't bend, not to pressure, not to fame, not to money. He stuck to his principles, and that kind of integrity, that's something every man secretly hopes to hold on to, especially in a world that's constantly trying to sell you out. He had the courage to take risks. You know how some actors play the same type over and over until it gets stale? Not Stewart. He could have coasted forever on roles like the kind-hearted George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life, or the patriotic Mr. Smith in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. And honestly, no one would have blamed him. Those roles were gold, but Stewart had guts, real ones. Instead of sticking to the aw-shucks persona, he flipped the script. He teamed up with Alfred Hitchcock and started showing us a totally different side, a haunted, obsessive, kind of messed up side. Enter Vertigo. Let's just pause there. In Vertigo, Stewart plays a man who becomes obsessed, and we're talking dangerously obsessed, with a woman who reminds him of someone he lost. He's not noble or charming, he's desperate, jealous, manipulative, and people were shocked. This wasn't the guy next door anymore, this was a man spiraling, and Stewart owned it. Same with The Naked Spur. In that one, he's a bounty hunter, but not the kind you'd want to grab a beer with. He's angry, selfish, and basically dragging his emotional baggage around the Old West like a bad mood on a leash. You can feel how tired and bitter he is, and yet you're still with him because Stewart makes it real. And here's the kicker. Audiences didn't walk away thinking, wow, Stewart's gone off the deep end. They walked away thinking, whoa, he's deeper than we thought. That's what made men respect him even more. He didn't just take risks, he took smart risks. He chose roles that let him stretch, evolve, and surprise people, but never just for shock value. It always came from character, from story, from something real he wanted to express, and it's like he gave every guy watching permission to not have it all together, to wrestle with dark thoughts, to feel broken sometimes, and still be strong. So yeah, Stewart wasn't just the nice guy, he was the nice guy who wasn't afraid to walk into the shadows and show you the cracks. That takes guts. And men noticed. He had incredible work ethic. This guy wasn't just clocking in for his close-up and calling it a day. No, he was built differently. Jimmy had that old-school, blue-collar, roll-up-your-sleeves kind of attitude that made men everywhere respect the hell out of him. First of all, the man made over 80 movies. That's not just, oh, I had a good run. That's, I basically lived on set for 40 years. And we're not talking about small roles either. We're talking lead roles, carrying entire films on his shoulders, sometimes multiple times a year. And the wild part? He never phoned it in. Not once. He treated every job like it mattered. Whether it was a lighthearted comedy like The Philadelphia Story or a gritty western like Winchester 73, Stewart brought the same level of prep, focus, and fire. He read scripts inside out. He worked with his directors, not against them. And if a scene wasn't clicking, he'd stay late to make it right. No complaints, no fuss. Just that classic, reliable Jimmy doing what needed to be done. You know what else people loved? He wasn't above anyone. He'd shake hands with the lighting guy, crack a joke with the boom operator, maybe even help carry a piece of set furniture if it meant keeping things moving. He didn't carry himself like a star. He carried himself like a teammate. That's why crews adored him. They knew he wasn't just showing up for the glamour, he was there for the work. And get this, even after becoming one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood, even after the Oscars and the box office hits and the legend status, Stewart still stayed grounded. He didn't get diva-ish, didn't start demanding special trailers or script rewrites with his name in bold. He just kept working, with that same humility, that same dedication. In fact, Alfred Hitchcock, who wasn't exactly generous with praise, called Stewart one of the most professional actors he ever worked with. High praise coming from a guy who worked with some serious heavyweights. That's the kind of energy men admired. He wasn't chasing the spotlight, he was chasing excellence, and he showed generations that greatness isn't about being the loudest or the flashiest. Sometimes it's just about showing up early, staying late, doing the hard stuff, and never acting like you're above it. James Stewart didn't just act in movies. He worked in movies, and everyone around him knew it. That's why his legacy doesn't just sit on a shelf in Hollywood. It lives on in every guy who values showing up, staying humble, and doing the job right. His sense of humor. He didn't need punchlines or slapstick. His humor was all in the delivery. That slow, stammering, deadpan drawl, the dramatic pause, the little twinkle in his eye like he was in on the joke before anyone else caught it. He had this way of making you laugh without lifting a finger, like literally, sometimes just a confused look or a slightly raised eyebrow would do it. That pause before a sentence? Comedy gold. And the best part? It never felt like he was trying to be funny. It just was funny because it was him. And Stewart didn't take himself too seriously either, which made him even more lovable. He could be this towering Hollywood figure with Oscars and military medals, but he'd still poke fun at himself in interviews. He'd tell stories about tripping over his lines or not knowing what the heck a leading man was supposed to do. And he told them like your grandpa would. A little bit rambling, a little bit wise, and just downright charming. One time, during a roast, someone joked that Stewart had the body of a scarecrow and the voice of a dial-up modem, and he just grinned and said something like, "Well, you forgot to mention I walk like a wind-up toy." That kind of self-deprecation? Priceless. Men loved that, because here was this massively successful guy who still saw himself as just a lanky fella from Indiana, Pennsylvania. Even in his movies, his humor was subtle but effective. Like in Harvey, where he plays a man whose best friend is an invisible 6-foot rabbit and somehow makes that feel totally normal. Or The Philadelphia Story, where he plays a journalist who stumbles through high society with all the awkward grace of a deer on roller skates. He didn't play the joke, he was the joke. And you loved him for it. That kind of quiet humor, that confidence to not need the spotlight to be funny, that's what made Stewart feel so cool to men. He wasn't the class clown. He was the guy sitting in the back of the room who drops one comment and has everyone cracking up. It was effortless, it was real, and it made you want to grab a drink with him and hear him tell stories all night. Humility, despite his fame. In an industry built on egos the size of California, Stewart somehow managed to stay grounded like he still lived down the street and mowed his own lawn. This guy was huge. We're talking one of the most beloved, bankable stars of the Golden Age. He had the awards, the box office hits, the military honors, and that instantly recognizable voice. But you'd never catch him acting like he was king of the world. No entourage, no tantrums, no "do you know who I am?" energy. Just Jimmy. He wasn't the kind of actor who showed up to premieres wearing sunglasses at night or made headlines for demanding imported spring water flown in from the Alps. Instead, he was the guy who'd probably show up early, shake hands with the valet, and say thank you, and mean it. And get this, even after winning the Academy Award for Best Actor for The Philadelphia Story, he kind of downplayed it, like, "Oh, well, that's nice." He reportedly gave the statue to his father, who displayed it in the family hardware store back in Indiana, Pennsylvania. That's right. Instead of putting it in a trophy case in Beverly Hills, he shipped it home like, "Hey, Pop, look what they gave me." Who does that? And when he returned from World War II, having served with distinction and flown actual combat missions, he didn't roll back into Hollywood with a hero complex. In fact, he was super private about it. He didn't boast, didn't demand roles to match his new war hero image. He just quietly went back to work like it was any other day. The studios had to remind people how impressive his service record was because he sure wasn't bringing it up.
One thing is true, the stars of the Golden Age knew how to have a good time. They were known for hosting some of the most famous parties of the era, with some of the top people in society in attendance. You could be sure to see all kinds of things at such parties, from overflowing booze to vices. While all of these are normal at parties, some of these Golden Age parties went too far and even made it into the news because of how scandalous they were. From the rumored orgies at Jane Mansfield's mansion to Fatty Arbuckle's deadly party, these 10 scandalous parties that took place in the Golden Age still shock people to this day. The Roaring Twenties Party. In the mid-1950s, America's power couple, Eddie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds, decided to host a party in their backyard. But this was not just any party. It was one that got people talking for a while. A good number of Hollywood couples threw parties in their homes during the Golden Age, but Eddie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds' 1955 party was said to be unforgettable. At the time, Eddie Fisher was known for his smooth and romantic chart-topping hits, while Debbie Reynolds, who was clearly smitten by the singer, was making waves as an actress. They both were at the peak of their careers in the 50s, and they were determined to keep working towards their goals. But every now and then, the couple loved to unwind and have fun by partying. Achieving such great things and getting famous in their 20s left them feeling fulfilled, and what better way to celebrate than to organize a party-themed Roaring Twenties. They wanted to enjoy their youth along with friends, and that was exactly what they did. They decided to transform their garage into a playroom as they set out to host one of the most exclusive parties in town. They invited some young stars like Tab Hunter, the poster boy for Teenage Dreams, and Leon Tyre, the charming actor. When the party began, everything seemed innocent, and the atmosphere was electric with the promise of a night to remember. But soon enough, it became obvious that this was not a regular party. It was a party where seemingly innocent young stars came ready to unleash their wild side. The party gave them permission to shed their public personas and reveal a wild side hidden from the prying eyes of the paparazzi. It was said that the party was not one for innocent eyes, as subtle glances turned into lingering touches, and the stars allegedly consumed all kinds of substances. From the pictures that circulated after the party, one could see that they all let loose and partied with reckless abandon. Most of the stars there were busy exploring their raw, untamed passion, and no one was left out of the fun. Only the people who attended the party truly know what happened that night, but rumors circulated that it was a bit too wild. No one expected it to turn out that way, especially because Debbie Reynolds and Eddie were known to have a wholesome image. MGM's Dark 1937 Party. The MGM's Grand Party in 1937 was an event that a lot of people enjoyed, but for one actress, Patricia Douglas, it turned into a night she desperately wanted to erase. According to reports, the party was organized in Los Angeles in honor of MGM's top salesman. There were already rumors about the strange things that the top men in the studio did behind closed doors, but not many people knew the extent of it. Before the party began, the studio brought the salesmen in by train from different parts of the country, and it looked like it was going to be the most glamorous party of the year. The event was extravagant, with star-studded meet and greets, marching bands to lead the way, and even a fleet of motorcycle cops providing a grand entrance. There was a private rail car, brimming with promise, booze, and lively conversations. To commence the ceremony, which was to take place at the famous Ambassador Hotel, MGM's Louis B. Mayer stepped on stage and gave a speech. But it was after the ceremony that the convention's grandeur took a dark twist. The centerpiece was a lavish party with the comedic brilliance of Laurel and Hardy and the mesmerizing Dandridge sisters. And there was an open bar, ensuring that spirits were as high as the Hollywood Hills. Yet, amid all the dazzle, Patricia Douglas, a dancer and movie extra, found herself in a nightmarish situation. She was one of 120 young women told they were destined for an on-location film shoot that evening. However, once they arrived, they realized they were trapped in an event with a sinister underbelly. It was said that the party was not a normal party, but a stag party. Several strange acts were rumored to have taken place on that night, but one of the most shocking was what happened to the young actress Patricia Douglas. As the night wore on, Douglas, amid the glitz and glamour, was allegedly targeted by a drunken salesman who not only forced her to consume alcohol, but also took alleged advantage of her. Never in her lifetime would she have thought that someone would do such a thing to her. She was devastated and shocked, but Patricia was not one to stay silent. She raised her voice and spoke out about what happened to her. She explained every detail, hoping to get justice. Unfortunately, the court was not exactly in her favor, not because she was lying, but because MGM allegedly made the story disappear. MGM didn't want the world to know that one of their best salesmen took advantage of an underage girl at a party they organized. This kind of scandal would have tarnished the image of the studio forever, so they used their influence to make the scandal disappear. Jayne Mansfield's Wild Mansion Party. Mansfield was a Hollywood star who defined the word wild. She was known for her fearless embrace of sensuality and glamour. Her figure-hugging outfits, her trademark blonde bombshell hair, and her smile were the weapons in her arsenal. She made sure the cameras loved her, and they sure did. But the wildness didn't stop at her looks. Jayne was a party animal, and her Hollywood Hills mansion was the backdrop for some of the wildest soirees that ever graced the hills. If you want to have an idea of what her parties looked like, picture a mansion in the Hollywood Hills with the stars twinkling overhead and the poolside lit up like a movie set. This was the setting for one of Jayne Mansfield's notorious house parties, a place where the word excess took on a whole new meaning. Excessive drinking, late-night revelry, and perhaps more were part of the package. There are rumors that these soirees weren't just about clinking glasses and polite chit-chat. The night would often take on a more uninhibited vibe, with guests participating in some, let's say, risque activities. There were rumors that her guests got involved in orgies during these parties. Some people even said she taped these acts for her guests. Yet it wasn't just about the parties. Jayne Mansfield was also known for her infamous affairs with some of the biggest names of the time, including Robert Kennedy and his brother John F. Kennedy. And it's safe to say that both Kennedys seemed to have a thing for the blonde bombshell. What happened behind the closed doors of Jayne Mansfield's house remains veiled in the allure of an era when stars lived larger than life. The Las Vegas Wild Party. Although the stars of old Hollywood partied a lot, these parties were mostly private and exclusive. Most times, only the stars in attendance witnessed firsthand what really happened in these parties. However, some of these parties made it to the tabloids because of the rumors that circulated about them. One of these parties was a 1950 Las Vegas party that played host to Montgomery Clift and an array of luminaries. On this particular night, a lavish party was about to unfold within the hallowed walls of a nightclub. The club was said to have imported several Hollywood stars for the party, which started off as a banquet. As the clock struck midnight, a parade of Hollywood's most illustrious names descended upon the club. Among the stars, the charismatic Daisy Arnaz, the enchanting Lucille Ball, and the alluring Marlene Dietrich took center stage. The party started with a fancy dinner, but as the hours ticked by, things got wild. Photographs captured by the flashbulbs of the era's paparazzi showed a glimpse of the spectacle unfolding behind the club's closed doors. Rows of champagne glasses glistened in the dimly lit room, and laughter and chatter filled the air. But it was what remained hidden from those photos that ignited the most scandalous rumors. While it looked like the party was a casual get-together, these Hollywood stars wanted to do more than just meeting and sipping champagne. They wanted to let loose and do things that they would never be caught doing in public. Behind the scenes, there was a lot going on. Rumors started to spread about this party. People said there was lots of drinking and even some drug use. Even the stars that were known to be reserved and laid back unleashed another side. The club made room for these Hollywood stars to do whatever they wanted. There were no restrictions, but they did all these with the understanding that whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. From every indication, the party turned into something wilder than anyone expected. The stars, known for their perfect public images, took off their masks, let loose, and did things that were a bit scandalous. Errol Flynn's weird parties. Because of how wild and wayward Errol Flynn was as a child, his own mother had a hard time coping with him. As a result of this, their relationship was rocky, and she even referred to him as the devil for some weird reason. Interestingly, Errol grew up to become an adventurous man who did not live by the rules, and he became a party animal too. While his career was thriving, the actor was hosting all kinds of parties in his mansion, and most of these parties were scandalous. Almost every week, he came together with the likes of Clark Gable, David Niven, and Olivia de Havilland to party. It was alleged that some of these stars even enjoyed watching the wild animals at the back of Flynn's house. It was said that his mansion was a sprawling Spanish-style abode with hidden alcoves and secret passageways. It's the perfect setting for a night of revelry. Now it's said that the drinks flowed freely at Flynn's parties, and it wasn't just your run-of-the-mill cocktails. We're talking about top-shelf liquor and champagne that never seemed to run out. The laughter and the clinking of glasses were only rivaled by the sound of jazz music filling the air. As the night went on, the parties took on a life of their own. Flynn, known for his charm and charisma, was at the center of it all, regaling guests with stories of his adventures. But it wasn't just about conversation. His parties were rumored to have been wild, with guests dancing with abandon and whispers of romantic escapades in hidden corners of the mansion. But it was said that most of the guests who attended his parties preferred not to talk about what happened behind closed doors. It was almost like he turned his house into a place where his co-stars came and did wild things, things they wouldn't dare to do on camera. Hetta Hoppers' unforgettable birthday bash. You've probably heard of some wild Hollywood parties, but this one was next level. Hetta Hopper was a prominent American gossip columnist and actress known for her influential role in the world of Hollywood journalism. The star-studded guest list read the likes of Judy Garland and Clark Gable, two icons in their own right, walking through the door. You can imagine the paparazzi bulbs popping like crazy, capturing every moment of what was shaping up to be a legendary night. The setting was as lavish as they come. We're talking about decorations that could rival the grandeur of a blockbuster film set. The champagne was excess, and there was an air of decadence hanging heavy in the room. However, the party wasn't just about mingling and sipping bubbly. It was rumored that the drinks were more than just cocktails. They were a one-way ticket to the wildest stories you'd ever hear. The excessive drinking was almost a given, and the night seemed to unravel into one for the Hollywood history books. The details of what exactly went down have been hushed over the years, reminding us that sometimes what happens in Hollywood stays tantalizingly behind closed doors. Joan Crawford's 1951 party. Let's step back in time to 1951 when the glamour of Hollywood was in full swing. A party to remember was in the works, and the star of the show, none other than Joan Crawford herself. The party took place at Stork Club, New York, but it was not your regular party. The Stork Club in Hollywood is a name that resonates with late-night revelry and the kind of extravagance that only old Hollywood could conjure. This was the place where Frank Sinatra crooned, Marilyn Monroe dazzled, and Humphrey Bogart owned the night. But that fateful night, Joan Crawford was the star of the night. Joan Crawford was known for being one of the most prominent and versatile actresses in the golden age of Hollywood. She was celebrated for her remarkable career, spanning several decades, and was renowned for her roles in films like Mildred Pierce, Possessed, and The Woman. The actress was also said to be a free spirit. When it came to partying, she did whatever she pleased. So on that starry night, Joan Crawford arrived at the Stork Club in grand style, ready to let loose and paint the town red. Rumor had it that the party took a wild turn. The party may have looked like an innocent gathering on the surface, but it was nothing close to innocent behind closed doors. After the party, photographs from the party began to circulate like wildfire and showcased Joan, the epitome of Hollywood elegance, letting her hair down, indulging in vices, and having the time of her life. It was a party where some glamorous stars had their moments of wild abandon. Sophia Laurens Los Angeles party. It was the year 1957, and Sophia Loren was throwing a party that was about to go down in Hollywood's history. If you've ever seen that iconic snapshot of Sophia eyeing Jane Mansfield's daring cleavage, well, that's just a sneak peek of what was in store that fateful night. The Paramount Pictures lot was buzzing with anticipation, all for the lady of the hour, Sophia Loren. You see, this wasn't your average soiree. This was an ode to glamour, star power, and a touch of wildness. Hollywood bombshells and the creme de la creme of Tinseltown's leading men were in attendance. The guest list read like a Hollywood Walk of Fame. But it wasn't just the people in attendance that caught people's attention. It was the things that they indulged in. If there was a queen of wild parties, it would be her. And guess what? She was there, right by Sophia's side. You just knew this night was about to take a walk on the wild side. The pictures from the party showed that Jane Mansfield had let go completely and was ready to have a good time. Behind those closed doors, things were heating up. People indulged in vices, puffing on cigarettes and sipping cocktails like there was no tomorrow. The air was thick with laughter, secrets, and that unmistakable Hollywood magic. People whispered about clandestine affairs, hidden rendezvous, and wild antics that made this party legendary. The truth is, it played out just like any other wild Hollywood soiree, excess, indulgence, and stories to tell for years to come. Sophia Loren's 1957 party was a night to remember, or maybe one to forget, depending on how much you indulged. The Wild Garden of Allah party. The Garden of Allah was a grand stage for Hollywood's wildest rendezvous in the 1920s and 30s. This wasn't just a hotel, it was a swirling maelstrom of glamour, gin, and gossip. The things that happened in this hotel would shock anyone who wasn't part of Hollywood's elite. Imagine stepping through the hotel's grand entrance, the faint strains of jazz dancing in the air. The lobby, adorned with Art Deco splendor, was calm before the storm. Once you entered the heart of the hotel, the real revelry began. This was the place where the likes of Errol Flynn partied. Excessive drinking was practically a Garden of Allah ritual. The bartender, a maestro of mixology, concocted cocktails that could make Hemingway blush. As the night aged, so did inhibitions. The stars, whether Fitzgerald with his novels or Flynn with his swashbuckling charm, were no strangers to the allure of a well-filled glass. But it wasn't just the booze that flowed there, it was secrets and scandals too. You'd find affairs blooming amidst the potted palms, trysts concealed behind heavy velvet curtains. Stars whispered sweet promises under dim chandeliers, knowing full well that the dawn would uncover their transgressions. Gossip flowed through the garden like the wine in their glasses. In 1930, a notorious party at the Garden had F. Scott Fitzgerald at the center of a fiery altercation. He reportedly threw a champagne glass at his wife Zelda during a heated argument. The party didn't just end in a whisper, it made headlines across the nation. These parties were wild. The Garden of Allah was a melting pot of vice and virtue, an incubator for scandal and salacious stories. Imagine, in the 1920s and 30s, the world was emerging from the constraints of prohibition, and Hollywood had a thirst to quench. If you'd attended, you'd be swept into a tempest of cocktails and carousing, where the laughter was raucous, the music was intoxicating, and the shadows concealed more than you could imagine. It was a place where stars shone brightest and fell hardest, where Hollywood's secrets and sins were laid bare under the California stars. These parties were a whirlwind of decadence and debauchery, where the only rule was to indulge in every whim. The excesses of the Marian Davies beach house. On the sun-kissed shores of Santa Monica in the 1920s, that's where you'd find the exclusive world of Marian Davies beach house bashes, where the newspaper magnate William Randolph Hearst and his mesmerizing mistress Marian Davies played host to extravagant gatherings that redefined the very essence of opulence. It was in this very house that a Hollywood star almost got shot. The scene was set against the backdrop of the Pacific Ocean, where golden sands met the blue horizon. The likes of Charlie Chaplin, the silent film maestro, and Greta Garbo, the enigmatic siren, were said to have partied there. However, chaos wasn't just a stranger, it was an unwelcome guest at these parties. The very extravagance that made these parties legendary also made them vulnerable to spiraling into mayhem. It wasn't unusual for the evening to end in a storm of shouting, shoving, and sometimes even broken glasses. For example, a notorious incident took place in 1924 when Hearst, known for his temper, allegedly pulled a gun on fellow guest Charlie Chaplin during an argument. It was the sort of drama that would give tabloids enough material to fuel their presses for weeks. If you were to attend such parties, you'd be a witness to history, a participant in the surreal world where excess was an art form. You'd see stars of the silver screen at the pinnacle of their fame, dressed in their finest, yet sometimes descending into the depths of chaos. You'd see the allure of Hollywood, but also the dark side of indulgence. These beach house bashes weren't just parties, they were a representation of the things that happened when Hollywood stars came together and decided to indulge in whatever they wanted to do. When the cameras were not present, these beach house bashes were a source of escape from the pressures of fame. These parties, as crazy as they seemed, were like a scene from Judy Garland's life.
He had the type of eyes you could get lost in, a voice that could cradle you to sleep.
Mr. Joshua.
A face you can stare at forever, and his charisma swallowed up all the attention in the room. You may remember him from films like Walk, Don't Run, Charade, and Father Goose, and if you do, you'd know he was a lady magnet. His female co-stars all wanted a slice of him, and his rugged looks had his female fans fawning. Ladies and gentlemen, Cary Grant. Timeless style icon. When Cary Grant walks into a room, everyone just stops. He doesn't need to say a word, doesn't have to make a big show. Just the way he's dressed tells you everything. He'll be in one of those perfect suits, the kind that looks like it was tailored just for him, hugging his shoulders and fitting like a glove. No loud colors or crazy patterns, just classic black or navy, maybe a gray that looks like it belongs in a vintage ad, but somehow he stands out more than anyone else there. Now, as you can imagine, women adored Cary Grant's style because it was a perfect blend of sophistication and subtlety, something that stood out without trying too hard. They loved that he always looked impeccable, whether he was on the big screen or out on the town, yet he never seemed like he was showing off. When women saw him in that famous gray suit from North by Northwest, it wasn't just the suit they noticed, it was how effortlessly he wore it. He looked polished, powerful, and completely at ease, and that confidence in his appearance made him endlessly appealing. But it wasn't only about his suits. Women loved the way he could look just as attractive in something casual. In To Catch a Thief, his Riviera wardrobe, simple button-up shirts, lightweight slacks, and those classic sunglasses had women swooning because he looked like the kind of man who didn't need to overthink his style. The way he looked so at home in everything he wore made women feel he was a man they could see themselves beside, whether at a high-end party or a relaxed seaside escape. And then there were his evening looks. Women couldn't get enough of him in a tuxedo, like in An Affair to Remember. They noticed the details, the perfectly fitted jacket, the slightly undone look of his bow tie that gave him this touch of rebellious charm. Grant didn't come off as stiff or formal, He looked as if he could laugh and flirt all night while still being the most dashing man in the room. Women found that irresistible because he didn't just look good, he made the people around him feel good too. His style wasn't just about clothes, it was about making everyone around him feel they were part of something special, something timeless. The ultimate gentleman. Today, gentlemen open car doors, pay for dates, or pull out seats for the lady. But Grant was the original pioneer of being a gentleman, and you didn't even have to meet him in real life to know that. When you think of his movies, there's no doubt that Carey was such a gentleman, and so it's not a surprise that ladies flocked to him. In movies, he played roles that highlighted not just his charisma, but his amazingly magnetic charm. Not only that, but he was also genuinely respectful and courteous. Think about An Affair to Remember. Grant's character, Nicky, could have easily been just another smooth talker, but he wasn't. Instead, he treated Deborah Kerr's character, Terry, with such warmth and respect. He didn't rush her or push his agenda. He let the romance grow naturally, and that patience was everything. And even though it was just a movie, women dared to believe he was that charming in real life. And just as they thought, off-screen he was just as much of a gentleman. Carey was known for being respectful and considerate of everyone, especially his female co-stars. Take Ingrid Bergman in Notorious, for instance. She once talked about how Grant made her feel comfortable and protected on set, even during intense scenes. That famous kiss scene, which goes on for what feels like forever, it was done in a way that never made her feel uncomfortable. He was attentive to her boundaries and focused on ensuring they worked as a team. Women found this so refreshing because, let's face it, not every Hollywood actor took that kind of care. And it wasn't just his co-stars, he was like this with his fans too. There's a story about a young fan who ran into him in a restaurant. Instead of brushing her off, he chatted with her, making her feel like she was the star. He'd write back to fans, too, in thoughtful notes that showed he genuinely cared. It wasn't an act, he was simply respectful and thoughtful to everyone he met, whether they were famous or just everyday admirer. Women noticed and they loved him for it because Cary Grant wasn't just playing the gentleman, he actually was one. His sensual appeal. Somehow, Carey trapped hundreds of women in his aura and appeal. Good-looking, smooth, and charming, but according to the ladies, there was something about him that made you want to take him to bed. So here's the thing about Cary Grant. He wasn't just good-looking or smooth. The guy had this crazy romantic pull that made everyone fall head over heels. Film critic Pauline Kael once called him the man from Dream City. Because unlike other Hollywood guys, he wasn't always chasing after women. Instead, they were usually chasing him, and that added this whole new level of sex appeal. Especially in his later movies when his co-stars were younger, you'd see them practically throwing themselves at him while he just stood there, cool as ever. And here's what really made him different. He wasn't the aggressive, forceful lover type. He was more of the ideal romantic partner, the kind of guy who didn't need to take charge to be attractive. A scholar named James Naremore explained it perfectly. He said Grant was a romantic ideal precisely because he didn't push or control the romance. He'd let the women lead sometimes, and that made him stand out. It's like he wasn't trying to prove anything. He was just there, so charming that women couldn't help themselves. You can especially see this in his comedies. Take Bringing Up Baby, where Katharine Hepburn is constantly dragging his character into the wildest situations. Grant doesn't try to control her or fight back, he just goes with it, letting her be the whirlwind. It's hilarious, and it makes their whole romance feel different and so much more interesting. He wasn't just sitting there making the moves, he was letting her take the lead, and that kind of role reversal was pretty rare back then. That's why women found him so irresistible. His characters made it okay for the woman to have the upper hand, to go after what she wanted, and that was new. With Grant, the romance felt real, fun, and modern because he was always open to letting his co-star shine. Women could imagine themselves in those roles, as the ones who got to make the first move or even pursue him, which just made him even more alluring. His wit and humor. Now, let's talk about Cary Grant and his effect on his leading ladies. This guy was so magnetic and natural on screen that he pushed his co-stars to step up their game. Take Rosalind Russell in His Girl Friday. She was already known for her quick, witty delivery in The Women, but when she teamed up with Grant, she had to take it to a whole new level. His clever, mischievous energy challenged her to be even sharper, quicker, and funnier. And what we got was one of the greatest rom-coms ever. Their chemistry was off the charts because Grant didn't just keep up with her, he inspired her to go all out. Then there's Bringing Up Baby with Katharine Hepburn. Hepburn was known as a serious actress, but the craziness of that movie, and Grant's total comfort with all the chaotic, silly antics, forced her to loosen up in a way she never had before. She had to ditch her usual serious actress vibe and just dive into the bizarre humor of it all. It's one of her most unforgettable performances because she's fully committed, and that's largely thanks to Grant giving her the space to be playful and let loose. Now think about Charade and To Catch a Thief, where he starred with Audrey Hepburn and Grace Kelly. These are women we think of as practically untouchable icons, classy, cool, and maybe even a little bit distant. But opposite Grant's mysterious charm, they got to explore a whole new side of their characters. With him, they could be flirtatious and bold, showing a hunger for adventure and romance that went beyond the typical leading lady roles of the time. He brought out something deeper and more daring in them, and that's what made those movies so captivating. Grant was such a perfect, easygoing movie star that people often accuse him of just playing himself in every role. And yeah, he was charming, handsome, and funny without trying, but that effortlessness was the work. His natural style hid all the complexity of what he was doing, so you almost forgot he was acting. It was like he created this larger-than-life version of himself on screen, so much so that he almost believed it. Born Archibald Leach in a poor family in Bristol, England, he reinvented himself through sheer grit and charisma, leaving behind his past for a Hollywood fantasy. He wrestled with insecurities and his own doubts, but he once said, "I think I became what I portrayed." There's even a story where he introduced himself to someone as Cary Grant, and she said, "You don't look like Cary Grant," to which he famously replied, "I know, no one does." It was his way of acknowledging that Cary Grant, the movie star, was a bit of a myth, one he'd carefully crafted, but that even he knew wasn't fully real. That's the genius of Grant. He made himself into a legend while keeping just enough distance to know that Cary Grant, movie star, was as much an invention as any of his characters. He had a spotless image and reputation. Women adored Grant because he seemed like the type who would never let them down. Smooth and charming, but also solid and dependable. Grant never played the bad boy or the reckless heartbreaker. He was the kind of guy who wore a suit so perfectly you'd swear he was born in it. He was the ideal leading man, someone who always had everything under control. In his films, you'd never see him get overly emotional or ruffled. No matter how crazy things got, he handled it all with a cool head and that famous half smile. Women found that kind of calm and confidence incredibly appealing. Who wouldn't be drawn to a man who could make you feel like everything would be okay? But then, this image was so great that even the studios he worked for had to maintain it. However, Cary Grant's perfect good boy image almost took a dark turn in Suspicion, playing a schemer who seduces Joan Fontaine's character and, in the original story, plans to kill her for her money. Imagine Grant as a cold, calculating husband. Almost unrecognizable, right? That's exactly what the film was supposed to show. But the studio got nervous about tarnishing his spotless image, so they forced a rewrite. Instead of poisoning his wife, it all ends with a twist. It turns out her suspicions were only in her head, and he's innocent after all. We're left with a what if? What if he'd been allowed to go full dark? Suspicion gave us just a taste of what Grant might have done if he'd explored these darker roles, but sadly, we never really got to see it. However, he did give us a deeper look in Hitchcock's Notorious. His character in this one isn't evil, but he's far from the polished, perfect Cary Grant we were used to. He's simmering with this bottled-up rage, heartbreak, and jealousy that makes you wonder if he's going to lose it at any moment. You see him as more than just the suave leading man. There's something broken and angry under the surface, like his good looks are just a mask hiding all this bitterness and pain. One scene where he watches Ingrid Bergman with this cold, devastated expression says it all. He barely moves or says a word, but you feel everything he's holding back. This side of Grant, The darker, more complex side was mesmerizing. It showed he could go places few expected, and that his talent wasn't limited to charm and good looks. For just a few moments, you see that his beauty could be unsettling, even dangerous, and it's thrilling to imagine the kind of roles he might have taken if the studios hadn't been so protective of his pristine image. Grant, the mystery man. While everyone else in the industry was all over the tabloids throwing parties and airing out their personal lives, Grant was different. He kept things quiet, private. He didn't feel the need to be front and center, and he definitely wasn't part of the Hollywood party scene. Instead, he stayed on the sidelines, letting people wonder, and believe me, they did wonder. Women absolutely adored him for this. There was something about his silence, his restraint, that was captivating. It was like he always had some secret he wasn't telling, and that drove people crazy in the best way. Women were drawn to him because he seemed so different from the typical Hollywood playboy. With Grant, you couldn't help but feel like there was so much more going on beneath that smooth exterior, but he only let you see what he wanted you to see. It made him feel almost unattainable, and women loved that. They didn't want the guy who was out there in the spotlight every night. They wanted the one who was cool, composed, and just a little bit mysterious. You didn't get any wild stories or public drama with him. He controlled his image, giving you just enough to keep you interested, but never too much. That air of mystery, of not quite knowing who Cary Grant was, made him feel almost out of reach, and that only made him more intriguing. Women loved that they had to wonder, that he was a puzzle they could never fully solve. It was like he had cracked the code on how to be endlessly fascinating by saying less, not more, and everyone was hooked. The god of romance. When it comes to classic romance, Cary Grant practically wrote the book. His roles in films like An Affair to Remember and To Catch a Thief weren't just love stories. They were fantasies that defined what romance could be on screen. In An Affair to Remember, he was the man who could make a promise on top of the Empire State Building feel like the most romantic gesture imaginable. He had this way of making even the smallest moments, just a look or a line, feel deep and meaningful, and audiences ate it up. Women watching these films couldn't help but imagine him as the ideal partner. Grant had this balance of charisma and tenderness, a rare blend that made it easy to believe he would love fiercely and loyally, with just a hint of mystery thrown in. James Nairmore, a film scholar, put it perfectly. Grant was a romantic ideal, not an aggressive lover. This shift in how the romance played out made his relationships feel more collaborative, like a dance between equals. And when it came to his screwball comedies, it was even more powerful. Grant didn't just play the charming leading man, he brought out the best in his co-stars, especially the women. Their performances became more textured, more nuanced, and the chemistry between them became the heart of the film. It wasn't just about the romance, it was about the kind of partnership that felt real and relatable, even if it was set in a comedic, often over-the-top world. The result was always a romance that felt fresh, exciting, and, in its own way, deeply empowering. In The Bachelor and the Bobby Soxer, there's this moment where Shirley Temple's character has a massive crush on Cary Grant, and her older sister, played by Myrna Loy, makes a snarky comment about Grant's fatal fascination and how it won't last. Of course, the joke's on her because she ends up falling for him too. And honestly, that's exactly how audiences have felt about Cary Grant ever since. Like Temple's character, we can't help but get caught up in the fantasy of Cary Grant. This charming, mysterious, exciting man who seems like he could be everything we dream of. Think about it. In To Catch a Thief and Charade, we totally get why Grace Kelly and Audrey Hepburn are so drawn to him, even with the hints of danger in his past. Or how in Suspicion, Joan Fontaine's character sticks by him despite her doubts, and in Holiday, Katharine Hepburn's character risks her stable life for a shot at adventure with him. He's the guy who makes you want to throw caution to the wind, whether you're the character on screen or a fan watching him, and Cary himself knew the effect he had. He once joked, "Everyone wants to be Cary Grant, even I want to be Cary Grant." That's what made him so magnetic. He embodied this perfect blend of fantasy and reality, making people feel like anything was possible if they were with him. In movies like The Bishop's Wife, where he even played an angel, he was the ultimate leading man, letting us all escape into that world where Cary Grant could be our own romantic hero. Ever the eye candy? Seeing Cary Grant's face for the first time was nothing short of a revelation. With his impossibly deep tan, those expressive chocolate brown eyes, and that glossy black hair, he had a look that could stop anyone in their tracks. And then there was his chin, famous for its dimple, instantly recognizable, making him stand out in a way most actors could only dream of. It wasn't just his good looks. It was the way he carried himself, effortlessly cool, as if he knew exactly how to captivate an audience with just a glance. Grant could have converted anyone to the Church of Cary with a single look. For one person, that moment came on a summer day nearly 20 years ago when they watched To Catch a Thief, 1955, for the first time. The film wasn't just their introduction to Alfred Hitchcock, a filmmaker who would go on to shape their cinematic taste, or to Grace Kelly, whose elegance was undeniable. It was their first real encounter with Cary Grant. In that moment, the actor's absurdly handsome face, paired with his striped sweater, polka-dotted scarf, and that effortlessly charming smile, completely captivated them. As the camera zoomed in on Grant's face, it was like the world stopped for a second. Who is this guy? They wondered, completely caught off guard by the magnetic presence Grant exuded. It wasn't just his appearance that had this effect. It was the subtle but undeniable charisma that Grant brought to every role, making everything seem so natural, so effortless. That one close-up was enough to leave a lasting impression, sparking a fascination that would only grow the more they watched his films. His raw aura. Cary Grant didn't need to do much to captivate you. He had a way of drawing you in without even trying. To Catch a Thief is a perfect example of this. There's a scene where he's walking through his garden, and it's somehow more graceful and refined than any perfectly tailored tuxedo. He doesn't have to say a word. It's just the way he moves, the effortless elegance of his every step that makes you pause and watch. Then there's that moment on the bus with the cage of twittering birds next to him. Grant's expression is deadpan, but somehow it makes you laugh anyway, even though there's no joke. It's the kind of subtle humor he mastered. Just a look, and you're in on the joke. And when he's sitting in a restaurant casually putting his foot up on a chair, it's suddenly the most charismatic, stylish thing a man could do. You find yourself thinking, why does this look so right? It's all part of his charm. He exudes mystery, intelligence, and class in every scene. Simply by existing, it's not just about the character he's playing. It's about who he is. You're not just invested in his roles. You're curious about him off-screen too, drawn in by the aura of sophistication and depth that seem to follow him everywhere.
It doesn't take a genius to know that one has to be daring and unconventional to be able to survive in Hollywood. But as early as the 1940s, several Hollywood icons have shown us just how daring they are. From falling in love with women half their age to marrying men over 2 decades older, this video tells the story of some of the most unconventional love and romances Hollywood has ever witnessed, proving once and for all that love indeed conquers all. But then again, not all of these stories have a happy ending. Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall. It all started in the 1940s when the 45-year-old actor Humphrey Bogart first set his eyes on Lauren Bacall on a movie set. It was at that moment that he made up his mind to pursue the 19-year-old actress at all costs. Unlike these days when the world embraces all kinds of relationships, the 1940s were a bit different and conventional. It was rare to see couples with decade-long age gaps, which was why Hollywood practically froze when Humphrey and Bogart and Lauren Hall fell madly in love with each other. The two met initially during the filming of To Have and Have Not in 1944. Lauren Bacall had just gotten her first lead role, and she was beyond elated. Her career was about to change, but she didn't know that her entire life was about to change as well. Lauren had seen Bogart in movies in the past, but she didn't see anything beyond his acting skills. As a matter of fact, when Lauren's friends tried to tease her about playing alongside Bogart, she would respond with, "Yuck." Under no circumstance did she feel anything more than professional respect for Bogart, but perhaps she was wrong. One of the most significant romances of her life was about to begin, and she had no idea When they finally met on set in 1944, she found something incredibly curious. Bogart was not this disgusting old man she had laughed with her friends about. No, he was so much more. He was charming, kind, considerate, and had a very good sense of humor. Ironically, Bogart, on the other hand, became smitten by the 19-year-old actress the moment she stepped on set. He had seen a lot of beautiful women in his life, but there was something fascinating about Lauren that he couldn't quite put his finger on. She had a different type of beauty, one that appealed greatly to him. Her face looked like that of a goddess, and she had this cute innocence about her. Bogart was intrigued. On top of that, he could also see how talented she was. However, one small flaw was very evident. Lauren was extremely nervous on set, and Bogart, being the smitten man that he was, decided to help her. As the two got closer on set every passing day, Bogart would do all he could to ease Lauren's nerves. He would tell her jokes to calm her down, and little by little, Lauren began to get more confident, and a sudden realization hit her. Bogart was not so bad after all. Soon enough, Lauren decided to stop holding back, and she let Bogart in completely, and as a result, the trajectory of their relationship began to take a rather interesting turn. First, the two became really close friends, enjoying each other's company, talking for as long as they wanted, laughing, joking, and making jest. Then it began to morph into something a little more personal and intimate as the two began to have more and more alone times in Lauren's dressing room. Now, to the rest of the crew, something was going on, but perhaps it was just actor chemistry or something. They decided not to give it too much thought, because if they were being honest, the age gap between the two was mighty awkward, and they couldn't bring themselves to imagine a romance brewing between them. Even between Bogart and Lauren, their relationship was undefined, until one day Bogart did something that took Lauren's breath away. One day, after a long day on set, Lauren hurried to her dressing room to rest. Bogart followed her in, as he has always done before, where they would talk and laugh. But this time, Bogart had something else in mind. In the middle of their conversation, he gently leaned in and held Lauren's chin, bringing her lips to his, and in that moment, nothing else mattered. They had sealed their relationship. However, this was not a fairy tale story. There were a dozen stumbling blocks in the way. The crew was happy for them when they realized the couple was in love, but the film director, Howard Hawks, whose wife brought Lauren on set, was not happy with the romance, especially with a man almost thrice her age. On top of that, Bogart was still married to his then third wife, Method. But despite all, the relationship grew stronger, forcing Bogart to divorce her, and on May 21st, 1945, Bogart and Lauren tied the knot. A marriage and relationship that, although unconventional, became one of the strongest and most powerful in Hollywood. Charlie Chaplin and Una O'Neill. Plagued by loneliness and a victim of his own success, Charlie Chaplin was one of the most successful men in Hollywood, but deep down there was a huge hole in his heart that he never thought would be filled until one day he met Una O'Neill, and right there and then he knew he had found the one. It was the height of his career, and his success so far knew no bounds. Some may even say Charlie distracted himself by plunging into his work, and unknowingly, he was setting himself up for more and more successes, but he kept his aching heart to himself. But all that was about to change very soon. In the year 1942, Charlie attended a party hosted by Charles Laughton, a British actor and director. Somewhere on the other end of the spectrum, a young lady who was aspiring to become an actress attended the same party. Her name, Una O'Neill. Unlike a lot of other aspiring actresses who were looking to get into Hollywood for fame and recognition, Una was more into acting because of a burning passion for theater. She had been raised in an artistic family, and all her life, literature and theater were all she knew. She was beautiful, intelligent, and had a grace that caught attention whenever she walked in, but her mission at this party was simply to meet people who could help her career. Little did she know that fate had planned a lot more for her that evening. The room was fairly large, but from the other end, Chaplin's eyes caught something striking, and that was when it happened. He laid eyes on Una and became instantly captivated by her radiant presence. He had to meet her. He had to get to know her, and he did. She was more than he thought she was. Not just a pretty face, but she had a sort of depth that intrigued him. Despite a significant age difference, with Chaplin being 53 and Una just 17, their connection was undeniable. So soon after, they began spending time together, engaging in lively conversations and sharing laughter, ultimately forging a strong bond. Make no mistake, despite the connection between Chaplin and Una, they came from completely different backgrounds. While she came from a humble but artistic past, Chaplin was involved in political and wartime pasts and backlash, but despite all, the couple found solace in each other, and their union gave them joy. More and more people around the couple began to get aware of the relationship and connection between them, and a lot of thoughts were raised. Despite the significant age difference, people thought their relationship won't last. They were from different worlds and were known for different things. What could they possibly have in common, people thought? Chaplin was a seasoned entertainer, celebrated for his iconic character, the Tramp, and his work as a filmmaker. Una, on the other hand, was young and relatively unknown in the industry, possessing an innate charm and natural talent. Perhaps this was solely a transactional relationship that would soon end. But soon enough, Chaplin shut the mouths of naysayers once and for all. In 1943, Chaplin took the bold step and proposed to Una, and without even a moment's pause, she accepted, agreeing to become his fourth wife. As one may imagine, their union raised eyebrows and garnered considerable attention due to their age difference and the public perception of Chaplin's controversial personal life. Despite being very aware of all that was being said about their union, Chaplin and Una's relationship continued to thrive. As though to prove a point, the couple went ahead to have 8 children together, raising a large and vibrant family. Over the years, Chaplin and Una built a sanctuary for their family in Switzerland, where they could retreat from the pressures of Hollywood and enjoy a quieter, more private life. They found solace in the beauty of nature and the bonds they forged with their children. Una became a pillar of strength and stability for Chaplin, standing by his side during his later years when he faced accusations and controversies. Sadly, Charlie Chaplin finally passed away on December 25, 1977, at the age of 88. He died of natural causes in his sleep at his home in Corsier-sur-Vevey, Switzerland. The cause of death was recorded as a stroke, but even though Chaplin's death marked the end of an era in the entertainment industry, Una was devastated and threw herself into a state of mourning that shook the foundations of Hollywood. She noted on several occasions that Chaplin was the love of her life and she was lost without him. Una eventually passed on too at the age of 66 due to cancer, Frank Sinatra and Mia Farrow. One warm evening in July when Mia attended one of Frank's electrifying performances. She'd been filming a movie nearby and just needed some time to cool off and enjoy herself. But as she stood there amidst the small crowd watching Frank, how he commanded the stage, how his voice wafted across the room in a titillating and almost sexy way, something shifted in her. To her, this was more than just a performance, it was a cry to her soul. For the entire duration of his performance, Mia couldn't take her eyes off Frank, and she couldn't shake off the feeling of being swept off her feet by his powerful performance. Frank, on the other end, despite seeing a sizable crowd, seemed to notice Mia, and he too was swept away by her beauty and grace. But he needed to focus on his performance. It was a huge battle trying not to be distracted by Mia's lingering but welcome gaze. As soon as the show was over, Mia and Frank got introduced to each other backstage, and the spark between them was instantaneous. At the time, Frank was 49 years old and Mia was only 19, but they could not deny that the feelings brewing in each other were not ordinary. Their personalities merged with each other more, and the bond they created was stronger than anything they had ever felt. Over the next few months, Frank and Mia began to spend more and more time with each other. Their shared love for art and music formed the foundations of their relationship. They would talk for hours despite their age difference. They were like best of friends, maybe a bit more than that even. Soon enough, amidst all the intimate conversations they shared, late-night walks and enchanting dinners at glamorous venues like the Sands Hotel's Copa Room, deeper feelings began to brew, feelings bigger than even they could handle. Not long after, a few people around them began to sniff out what was going on between them, but none of these mattered much until the media got a hold of their relationship. The news spread like wildfire. The media and the public at large were intrigued by the relationship, and as such had a lot of things to say about them. For one, the contrast between Frank's established status in the entertainment industry and Mia's fresh-faced innocence fueled endless speculation and gossip. Some said Mia was positioning herself to be a benefactor of his money or use his connections to get more roles. Other critics dismissed their relationship as a passing fling, while some others simply scoffed at the obvious age difference and condemned their relationship on those grounds. In the heat of all these speculations that would probably break an average couple, Frank and Mia decided to shock everyone completely. On July 19, 1966, the couple tied the knot at the Sands Hotel. It was almost as though the entire Hollywood was out of breath. Everyone was shocked and speechless. Not many people believed that the relationship would stand the test of time. Then, a lot of people became believers in their love. But another larger group of critics still believed the marriage wouldn't last. And to be fair, the odds were on the critics' side. In the past, Frank had already been married and divorced 3 whole times. This was his 4th marriage. To everyone else, it would end up like the last 3 did. Mia's youth and innocence only intensified the public's fascination with their union. However, amidst the media frenzy, Frank and Mia found solace in each other's arms and nurtured a genuine connection. Throughout their relationship, Frank and Mia seemed to be shoving their love in the faces of their critics. They traveled to various enchanting destinations, escaping the relentless media attention. They frequented Palm Springs, a desert oasis where they enjoyed quiet retreats in luxurious estates surrounded by palm trees and stunning mountain views. The couple also embarked on romantic getaways to Europe, strolling hand in hand along the charming streets of Rome, Paris, and Venice. However, despite the happiness they found in each other's company, Frank and Mia's relationship was not without its challenges. First, being very successful in their respective careers, they began to face its pressures because due to their jobs, they often had to spend time apart. Frank with touring and Mia pursuing her acting ambitions. On top of all that, Frank's tumultuous lifestyle and connections with powerful individuals raised eyebrows and fueled rumors of infidelity. Ultimately, the strain proved too much, and sadly, Frank and Mia decided to part ways. They announced their separation in 1968, after less than 2 years of marriage. Although their love story came to an end, the impact of their relationship lingered in the memories of those who witnessed their union. Aristotle Onassis and Jackie Kennedy. He was 62 years old and she was 39, but it was the perfect match. Aristotle Onassis, immensely rich through his shipping business, had a charismatic presence and the owner of a private island. Jackie Kennedy, the widow of John F. Kennedy, simply needed solace after the tragic events at Dallas. Several times in the past, the two had crossed paths, but nothing really stuck, and there wasn't enough time to explore the depths of their personalities. But all that changed when Jackie decided one day to visit an island. It was a sunny afternoon. Jackie first set foot on an island, accompanied by her sister, Lee Radziwill. The purpose of their visit was supposed to be brief, just to get away from all the prying eyes of the public and relax in solitude and tranquility amidst the waters and fragrant olive trees. But she had no idea that her stay on this island would make her cross paths with one of the most intriguing men she had ever met. Just as she was exploring the island, she ran into him, Aristotle. Now the two had met each other before at social gatherings. They had talked before, but the conversations had been brief, polite, and filled with a bit of formality. But here on the island, perhaps it was the beauty of nature all around them, or the seclusion the island provided, but their conversations took a deeper root now, deepening their connection. Even Jackie had to confess to herself that although she had been fascinated by Aristotle before now, it was deeper and unlike anything she had ever felt before. As the days turned into weeks, Aristotle and Jackie enjoyed each other's company more than they had ever done before. They would walk along the secluded beaches, sharing their thoughts and dreams, and this formed the basis of the interest between them. Aristotle, being older and more experienced, had a life filled with lots of victories and challenges, so he was in a great position to offer Jackie some deep wisdom and a listening ear to her own problems. She was also a great companion for him despite her grief. Both of them had longed for each other, and here they were, with each other. It was a perfect stroke of luck. Their love story flourished in the Mediterranean paradise, shielded from the prying eyes of the world. The island became a sanctuary for their burgeoning romance, a place where they could escape the pressures of their public lives. Jackie found solace in the warm embrace of Aristotle, while he reveled in her intellect, grace, and timeless beauty. Soon enough, the press, as they always do, got hold of this new relationship, and speculations and fascination were the order of the day. Many were taken aback by Jackie's choice to enter into a romance with a man of such prominence and wealth. Some saw it as a betrayal of the memory of her late husband, while others viewed it as a means to secure her future. But in 1968, to show how unbothered they were about all these speculations flying around, Aristotle proposed to Jackie, offering her the promise of a new beginning. However, just when the world could almost hear wedding bells, something terrible happened. Jackie, seemingly from nowhere, suddenly decided that marrying Aristotle was not the right move for her. All wedding plans were halted, and as one may imagine, the media and public were speechless as a result of her sudden decision, a decision that marked a turning point in their relationship. Just like that, the romance brewing between the two ended, but despite that, they managed to remain friends, supporting each other and continually maintaining high respect and admiration for one another. Harrison Ford and Callista Flockhart. Harrison Ford has a certain rugged handsomeness about him, and after playing a lot of iconic roles in his career, he could have any woman he wanted. But the moment Callista Flockhart crossed his path, it was the beginning of the end of his search. On the set of a movie in 2002, Harrison and Callista met for the first time ever, and it was love at first sight. Harrison, already an established actor with a long list of accolades, was captivated by Callista's charm and talent. Callista, who had risen to fame through her role in the hit TV series Ally McBeal, was drawn to Harrison's undeniable charisma and his ability to bring depth to every character he portrayed. As they worked together, a genuine connection blossomed between Harrison and Callista. They discovered shared passions and values, and their friendship evolved into something deeper. Harrison, having experienced the ups and downs of love and relationships, found comfort and fascination in Callista's down-to-earth nature and radiant spirit. Callista, too, loved Harrison's wisdom, kindness, and unwavering support. They were all they'd prayed for and were lucky to find each other. Their relationship took root amidst the glittering backdrop of Hollywood, where rumors and media attention often threatened to overshadow the genuine love they shared. However, Harrison and Callista remained steadfast in their commitment to each other, shielding their romance from the prying eyes of the public. In 2009, after 7 years of dating, Harrison and Callista took their love to the next level and tied the knot in a private ceremony. The event was a reflection of their desire to keep their love story personal and intimate, away from the glitz and glamour of the industry. Over the years, Harrison and Callista cultivated a strong and enduring bond. They faced challenges together, supporting each other through professional commitments and personal triumphs. Despite their demanding careers, they made time for family, cherishing moments with their children and creating a loving home filled with laughter and joy. In the end, one could say that all of these women were go-getters who fell in love and didn't allow any naysayer to sway them. Even if you have $4 million in the bank, you can't buy another liver. These were the words that George Maharis said in an interview when he realized that he had an illness that could potentially put an end to his life. At the time, he was on top of his game in Hollywood, but now he had no other choice but to leave. Seems simple enough, but Hollywood wasn't done with him yet, and so they decided to fight and force him to stay even when he didn't want to. George was devastated. The producers at Route 66 were determined not to let him go. The battle line was drawn. How did it all pan out? Let's find out. Little beginnings. He was a natural-born singer, ready to take on the music industry. But all his dreams of being a musician came crashing down when he damaged his vocal cords. This rather unfortunate event would lead him to the very craft that changed his life forever. The talented star George Maharis was born in Astoria, Queens. He had a lot of siblings, as he was the third child out of 7 in his family. Unfortunately, his parents were not financially equipped to take care of him and his siblings. They were struggling initially to make ends meet. He did not exactly grow up in a wealthy home, but his parents had always tried to do their best to take care of him and his other 5 siblings. They had migrated from Greece in search of a better life for their family, and they worked hard for it. Growing up, George was a fairly good kid. He did as his parents asked and never got into any sort of serious trouble. So when it was time to start high school, his parents were assured that George would make them proud. He was enrolled in Flushing High School, where his classmates noticed his singing talent. But if he was being honest with himself, George did not really like school. Education did not appeal to him, but his immigrant parents would not watch him throw his life away, so they agreed on a compromise. Although he didn't finish school, George later joined the United States Marine Corps for 18 months. After that, he earned his high school diploma. Solid compromise, but Gurge still had a gaping hole in his heart. He had a passion for singing, and he would be better off pursuing that. So he decided to pursue a career in singing, but he quickly realized that pursuing a singing career was not exactly lucrative. Also, he was said to have undergone improper vocal lessons that damaged his vocal cords. When this happened, he knew for a fact that he could not pursue a singing career in the long run. He later picked up another interest in not just entertainment but acting, and he appeared in musicals outside of New York City. His first acting opportunity came on the TV show Mr. Peepers, where he played a funny version of Marlon Brando. Now the trajectory of his career had changed. He decided he was fascinated by acting, and so he studied at the Actors Studio with Sanford Meisner and Lee Strasberg. His dream was simple: learn all he can and dominate Hollywood. If only it were that easy. Route 66, his big break. A few years after learning in acting school, George came out energetic and ready to take on Hollywood, but no one told him that nothing was handed to anyone on a platter of gold. So, like a lot of other aspirants, George Maharis had to start from scratch and work on several acting gigs here and there, but nothing solid enough to put his name on the map. But he kept at it and hoped that one day he would get his big break. Sure enough, in 1960, Maharis starred alongside Martin Milner in the TV series Route 66, which aired on CBS. And as one would expect, he played the role with all of his might, and people noticed. His performance was recognized with an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Series in 1962. He was the happiest man in the world when the praises and accolades started rolling in. His dream was coming through before his very eyes. Months later, Maharis had appeared in about 82 episodes when health issues began to come for him, including a serious case of hepatitis. The next line of action was clear. He had to leave the show. Everyone, both fans and studio producers alike, were sad to see him leave, but after he left, he dedicated his life to making a good recovery and perhaps coming back to work. Once again, fate smiled at him. In 1962, George was healthy enough to come back to work. He had made a full and fast recovery, and when asked how he did it, he claimed that abstaining from alcohol was what helped. But now, things were a little different at work. The work hours were brutal, and he just could not keep up. So again, George had to leave, as it was taking a toll on his health. In an interview, George was asked why he decided to leave again, and his answer was simple and short. He said, "I have to protect my future. I keep going at the present pace. I'm a fool." But after working with them all this while, the Route 66 producers would not let George go just like that, and so they put up a fight, a rather aggressive fight, Maharis versus Route 66. When the producers found out that George was leaving, they resorted to starting a legal battle that he didn't see coming. Initially, Maharis didn't seek other employment, but once the producers replaced him for the next season, he began booking other engagements. He had been scheduled to appear on The Ed Sullivan Show in June 1963, but the Route 66 producers, claiming he was still under an exclusive contract, prevented his appearance through legal action. They accused him of faking illness to break his contract. One person even accused Maharis of prioritizing a film career over his loyalty to the company, his co-star, and the rest of the show's cast and crew. Maharis argued that times had changed and companies couldn't treat actors as mere commodities. He eventually won the legal battle, proving that his contract was invalid. Despite attempts at reconciliation from the Route 66 producers, Maharis made his first TV appearance after leaving the show on July 2, 1963. After his departure, the show's popularity declined, and it was ultimately canceled in March 1964, the fate that the producers were trying to escape. But sadly, now it was too late. Even though George had won the case, after a while he figured the acting industry was a bit too toxic for him, and then he remembered he had other interesting talents as well. In that pivotal moment, His spirit ignited, and he found himself on a profound journey of self-discovery that revealed a gift that had laid dormant within him for years, the exploration phase. It was almost as though Maharis just remembered he could sing. This single realization was the beginning of a memorable music career. Instantly, he decided to take a break from the acting scene and plunge into singing with as much excellence as he could, and the results were simply astonishing. Early in his career, Maharis released albums and singles through Epic Records. His first album, titled George Maharis Sings, had a notable presence on Billboard's album chart in 1962, staying for 29 weeks and reaching number 10. It ended up being the 41st most popular album of the year. One of his singles, Teach Me Tonight, achieved moderate success. It spent 11 weeks on the Billboard charts in 1962, reaching number 25 on the Hot 100 and number 8 on the Easy Listening chart. Another single, Love Me As I Love You, reached number 17 on the Easy Listening chart in September 1962. In 1963, Maharis made his singing debut on television, appearing on The Judy Garland Show. He performed the song Side by Side alongside Judy Garland. But all of these successes were not enough for him. He was on a roll now, and so later on, he decided to expand his career into something a bit different. Maharis began performing in nightclubs and pursuing a newfound passion for painting. As of 2008, he continued to paint, dividing his time between New York City and Beverly Hills, California. But just like many Hollywood stars, Maharis found himself bearing the brunt of his scandalous life. More legal issues. Unfortunately, even though George had lived a life free of drama and scandals, this feat would later be supplanted. Now, George began to live life on the edge and on the fast lane. Sadly, it got him inevitably in trouble. In 1967, George was arrested on charges of lewd conduct, but that was not all, because in 1974 he was arrested on charges of perversion for using the men's bathroom as a place of inappropriate behavior and intercourse. However, those charges were eventually dismissed. But in 1967 and 1975, he was back in cuffs again for trespassing and disturbing the peace. Thankfully, they were misdemeanor offenses, and so he pled guilty. One would only wonder where all these behaviors came from. But after 1975, George stayed away from trouble and lived a fairly normal and quiet life. But sadly, no one can run from the jaws of inevitability, the sad demise. By now, George Maharis had lived a good life. He had left a mark and retired to his home in Beverly Hills. But even at that, no one was fully prepared for what came next. It was May 24th, 2023, when Maharis finally passed at the age of 94. On one hand, he was mourned by those who loved and cherished him, but on the other, it called for a celebration of a life well lived. In the glimmering world of Hollywood, where the silver screen casts its spell over millions, there exists a darker tale, a tale that doesn't make it to the headlines but circulates in hushed whispers among those who walk the red carpets and those who merely dream of it. This is not a story of glamour or the American dream realized. It's a story of the 17 biggest jerks of Hollywood's golden era. These are the actors and actresses who, despite their undeniable talent and fame, had a knack for making life difficult for those around them. As you delve into these chapters, you'll find that each actor's story is a world unto itself, a world filled with ego, betrayal, and sometimes outright cruelty. But why focus on the negative, you might ask? Because it's often in the shadows that we find the most truth. These stories serve as cautionary tales, a behind-the-scenes look at what happens when fame, money, and unchecked ego collide. So let's pull back the curtain and take a closer look. Our first chapter will introduce you to a man who was as famous for his on-screen charm as he was infamous for his off-screen antics. A man whose smile could light up a room, but whose temperament could just as easily darken it. Are you intrigued? Good. Clark Gable was a king on screen, but was he a tyrant behind the scenes? The man who made hearts flutter as Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind had a charisma that was undeniable. His square jaw, twinkling eyes, and that iconic mustache made him the epitome of Hollywood masculinity. But off-screen, the king of Hollywood had a reputation that was less than regal. Gable was known for his womanizing ways, a trait that led to multiple marriages and affairs. His relationship with Carole Lombard was the stuff of legends, but even that had its rocky moments. Lombard, known for her spunky personality, was one of the few who could handle Gable's strong character, but she wasn't the first or last to be charmed and subsequently hurt by him. His co-stars often had mixed feelings about working with him. Vivien Leigh, who played Scarlett O'Hara opposite Gable's Rhett Butler, found him irresistible but also incredibly intimidating. He had a way of owning the room, and while that worked wonders on screen, it could make for a tense atmosphere behind the scenes. Gable was also known for his lack of patience with directors and crew members. His ego was as big as his talent, and he wasn't afraid to let people know when he was displeased. This led to several on-set conflicts, most notably with director Victor Fleming during the filming of Gone with the Wind. Gable's temper was infamous, and it wasn't uncommon for him to storm off set if things didn't go his way. But despite his flaws, Gable had a magnetic allure that couldn't be ignored. He was a complicated man, full of contradictions. He could be incredibly charming one moment and infuriating the next. Yet, it was this complexity that made him human and, in a strange way, even more captivating. So, was Clark Gable a king or a tyrant? Perhaps he was a bit of both. But one thing is certain. His legacy as one of Hollywood's greatest actors is indisputable, even if the man behind the legend was far from perfect. Joan Crawford, born Lucille Fay LeSueur, was a Hollywood icon whose career spanned decades from the silent era to the golden age of cinema. She won an Academy Award for her role in Mildred Pierce and was known for her beauty, talent, and ambition. However, her legacy is also marred by the infamous portrayal of her as a cruel and abusive mother in the memoir Mommy Dearest, written by her adopted daughter, Christina Crawford. The book, published in 1978, painted a disturbing picture of Crawford as a controlling, alcoholic mother who emotionally and physically abused her children. The memoir was later adapted into a film starring Faye Dunaway, further cementing this negative image of Crawford in the public's mind. Scenes like the No Wire Hangers episode became cultural touchstones, often overshadowing Crawford's cinematic achievements. Christina Crawford's account has been both supported and disputed. Some of Crawford's friends and colleagues, like actress Myrna Loy, defended her, stating that they never witnessed any abusive behavior. However, others, like actor Cliff Robertson, claimed that Crawford had a Jekyll and Hyde personality capable of both kindness and cruelty. Crawford's relationship with her other children was also complicated. Her adopted son, Christopher, corroborated Christina's accounts of abuse, while her twin daughters, Kathy and Cindy, defended their mother, stating they never experienced any mistreatment. The actress herself was a product of a difficult upbringing, born to a teenage mother and an absent father. She was sexually abused by her stepfather and worked menial jobs before making it in Hollywood. Some speculate that her own traumas may have influenced her parenting style. Despite the controversies, Crawford's contributions to film cannot be denied. She was a founding member of the Screen Actors Guild and was known for her philanthropic efforts, including donations to educational institutions and hospitals. In the end, Joan Crawford remains an enigmatic figure. Her life was a blend of triumphs and tragedies, and she was both a victim and, allegedly, a perpetrator. The question remains, was Joan Crawford the monster that Mommy Dearest portrayed her to be, or was she a complex woman shaped by the highs and lows of an extraordinary life? Bette Davis. The two-time Academy Award-winning actress was known for her strong, independent roles and her equally strong personality. Her eyes were the subject of a hit song, and her acting prowess was the stuff of legend. However, Davis was not without her flaws, and her reputation for being difficult to work with was well known in Hollywood circles. Davis had a penchant for speaking her mind, regardless of the consequences. While this forthrightness was often celebrated, it also made her many enemies. She was notorious for her feuds with studio executives, directors, and co-stars. Her most famous feud was with Joan Crawford, her co-star in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. The animosity between the two was so intense that it became the stuff of Hollywood legend. Davis once quipped about Crawford, "She slept with every male star at MGM except Lassie. Her sharp tongue wasn't reserved for just her enemies. Even her friends and family were not immune." Davis was married 4 times, and each marriage ended in divorce. Her relationship with her daughter, B.D. Hyman, was so strained that Hyman wrote a scathing memoir about her mother, describing Davies as controlling and emotionally abusive. Davies was also known for her diva-like behavior on set. She had specific demands about lighting to showcase her famous eyes, and often clashed with directors who didn't meet her standards. During the filming of All About Eve, it was rumored that she had a contentious relationship with her co-star, Ann Baxter, and was not above scene stealing to ensure she remained the center of attention. Moreover, Davies had a reputation for being a career-first woman, often at the expense of her personal relationships. Her ambition led her to take roles that others turned down and to work with people she despised. While this drive made her a star, it also made her isolated, as many in the industry found her too challenging to deal with. While Bette Davis is undoubtedly one of the greatest actresses in the history of cinema, her off-screen persona was far more complicated. Her wit and intelligence, so captivating on screen, could turn cutting and cruel in real life. She was a woman who defied conventions and broke barriers, but in doing so, she left a trail of broken relationships and bruised egos. Humphrey Bogart. The man who gave us iconic roles like Rick Blaine in Casablanca and Sam Spade in The Maltese Falcon was as tough off-screen as he was in his films. However, this toughness sometimes manifested as outright rudeness and a lack of consideration for others. Bogart was known for his heavy drinking, a habit that often led to unpredictable and aggressive behavior. During a party at Frank Sinatra's house, a drunken Bogart reportedly became belligerent, insulting several guests and causing a scene. Sinatra had to intervene and escort him out, damaging their friendship for a time. His relationship with his third wife, Mayo Method, was notoriously volatile, fueled by both parties' alcoholism. The couple was known in Hollywood circles as the Battling Bogarts due to their frequent public fights. On one occasion, Bogart even threw Method off a boat into the water during an argument, an act that was both dangerous and humiliating for her. Bogart also had a contentious relationship with the press. He was known to be curt and dismissive with reporters, often giving sarcastic and cutting responses to their questions. During a press conference for In a Lonely Place, he berated a reporter for asking what he considered to be a stupid question, causing an awkward tension in the room. Even his friendships were not immune to his abrasive behavior. Despite a close friendship with Casablanca co-star Claude Rains, Bogart once publicly embarrassed him during a dinner party by making fun of Rains's English accent and theatrical mannerisms, leaving Rains visibly upset. Furthermore, Bogart was not above using his star power to belittle others. During the filming of Key Largo, he clashed with director John Huston over creative differences. Bogart, unhappy with Huston's direction, openly criticized him in front of the crew, undermining Huston's authority on his own set. Judy Garland. The star of The Wizard of Oz is often remembered for her angelic voice and tragic life story. However, like many stars, Garland had moments where she was far from the darling the public adored. Her life was a roller coaster of ups and downs, and during the lows, she was known to lash out at those around her. Garland's tumultuous relationship with her mother, Ethel Gum, was well documented. Ethel was a stage mother who pushed Garland into the limelight at a young age. However, Garland often blamed her mother for her own struggles with addiction and mental health, going so far as to publicly call her a monster in interviews. While Ethel was far from perfect, Garland's public vilification of her added fuel to an already complicated relationship. On set, Garland could be equally difficult. During the filming of A Star is Born, she was frequently late, causing delays that cost the production thousands of dollars. Her behavior was often erratic due to her dependence on prescription medication, leading to mood swings that made her difficult to work with. She was known to snap at crew members and even threw a cup of coffee at director George Cukor in a fit of rage. Her marriages were also fraught with tension. Garland's third husband, Sid Luft, claimed that she tried to attack him with a kitchen knife during an argument. While Luft was no saint himself, this incident showed a volatile side to Garland that the public rarely saw. Garland's relationship with her children was complicated as well. Lorna Luft, her daughter, wrote in her memoir that Garland could be emotionally manipulative. She would often pit her children against each other and against their fathers, using them as pawns in her own emotional games. Even her friendships were not immune to her darker tendencies. Garland had a falling out with several close friends, including Frank Sinatra, whom she accused of exploiting her vulnerabilities for his own gain. Whether this was true or not, it showed a tendency to burn bridges and alienate those who cared for her. John Wayne, the iconic American actor known for his roles in westerns, is often seen as a symbol of rugged individualism and moral clarity. However, Wayne's off-screen persona was not always as admirable as the characters he portrayed. His public and private actions revealed a man who could be insensitive, prejudiced, and downright rude. One of the most glaring examples of Wayne's less-than-heroic behavior was his stance on race and civil rights. In a 1971 interview with Playboy magazine, Wayne made a series of racially insensitive comments, including stating that he believed in white supremacy. These comments were not only shocking, but also revealed a deep-seated prejudice that was hard to reconcile with his public image. Wayne's relationships with women were also problematic. Despite being married 3 times, he was known to be a serial philanderer. His affairs were not just a breach of trust, but also a form of emotional manipulation, as he would often pit women against each other, reveling in the drama it caused. On set, Wayne was known for his authoritarian tendencies. He often clashed with directors and co-stars who did not share his political views or who questioned his authority. During the filming of The Green Berets, Wayne's strong support for the Vietnam War created tension on set. He was dismissive of anyone who opposed the war, labeling them as unpatriotic, and this extended to his interactions with crew members, some of whom were drafted to fight in Vietnam. His relationship with his children was also complex. Ethan Wayne, his son, revealed in interviews that while Wayne was a loving father, he was also a strict disciplinarian who did not tolerate dissent. This authoritarian approach to parenting often led to strained relationships with his children, especially as they grew older and developed their own views. Wayne's friendships were not immune to his abrasive behavior. He had a long-standing friendship with actor Ward Bond, but the friendship ended abruptly when Bond expressed support for the civil rights movement. Wayne saw this as a betrayal and cut off all contact with Bond despite years of close friendship. Marlene Dietrich. The German-American actress and singer was a symbol of elegance, beauty, and sexual ambiguity. Her roles in films like The Blue Angel and Morocco made her an international star. However, behind the scenes, Dietrich had a reputation for being difficult to work with and was known for her sharp tongue and dismissive attitude. One of the most talked about aspects of Dietrich's life was her numerous affairs, both with men and women. While her open sexuality was revolutionary for the time, the way she conducted her relationships was often less than admirable. She had affairs with co-stars, directors, and even military officers during WoMen, often regardless of their marital status. This cavalier attitude towards relationships often led to broken homes and strained friendships. Dietrich was also known for her diva-like behavior on set. She was extremely particular about lighting and camera angles, often clashing with directors and cinematographers to get her way. While some saw this as a sign of her commitment to her craft, others viewed it as egotistical and self-centered. Her demands were not limited to her professional life. She was known to be equally demanding in her personal relationships, often requiring extravagant gifts and constant attention. Her relationship with her daughter, Maria Riva, was fraught with tension. Dietrich was often absent, both emotionally and physically, as she prioritized her career over her family. Maria wrote in her memoir that her mother was manipulative and controlling, often using emotional blackmail to get her way. This strained relationship was indicative of Dietrich's general approach to personal relationships, which often took a back seat to her career and desires. In her later years, Dietrich became increasingly isolated. Her diva-like behavior had burned many bridges in Hollywood, and her waning popularity made her even more difficult to work with. She spent the last decade of her life in seclusion in Paris, rarely seen in public, and refusing most interviews. This self-imposed exile was perhaps the ultimate expression of her complex personality, a blend of glamour and vulnerability, kindness and cruelty. Ava Gardner. The sultry Hollywood starlet was the epitome of beauty and grace on screen. However, behind the scenes, she had a reputation for being difficult to work with and had a penchant for stirring up drama. While her talent was undeniable, her behavior often left much to be desired. One of the most talked-about incidents was her tumultuous relationship with Frank Sinatra. While Sinatra was head over heels for Gardner, she seemed to relish the power she had over him. She was known to be openly flirtatious with other men, just to get a rise out of Sinatra. This emotional manipulation took a toll on Sinatra, affecting both his personal life and career. Gardner was also notorious for her diva-like behavior on set. She had a habit of showing up late, keeping entire productions waiting, and then acting as if nothing was wrong. Her lack of professionalism didn't end there. She was known to be rude to crew members and even fellow actors. During the filming of The Sun Also Rises, she reportedly clashed with Ernest Hemingway, who was not pleased with her interpretation of his character, Lady Brett Ashley. Gardner dismissed his concerns, stating that she knew better how to portray a woman. Her love for alcohol was no secret, and it often exacerbated her erratic behavior. She was known to throw fits when things didn't go her way, and her mood could switch from charming to irate in a matter of seconds. This volatility made her unpredictable, adding stress to an already high-pressure environment. While Ava Gardner's on-screen presence captivated millions, those who knew her personally were often subjected to her less-than-stellar behavior. Her actions serve as a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful faces can hide the most complicated personalities. Vivien Leigh Best, known for her iconic roles in Gone with the Wind and A Streetcar Named Desire, was a force to be reckoned with on screen. However, off-screen, she was often a challenging person to deal with. Her beauty and talent were undeniable, but they came with a side of arrogance and a sharp tongue that could cut like a knife. Leigh was known for her intense dedication to her craft, but this often translated into a demanding and sometimes cruel demeanor on set. She was notorious for insisting on multiple takes, even when everyone else was satisfied, pushing her co-stars and crew to the brink of exhaustion. Her perfectionism often crossed the line into outright rudeness. Her relationship with Laurence Olivier, one of the greatest actors of his time, was tumultuous at best. While their love story is often romanticized, the reality was far from perfect. Leigh was known to be possessive and jealous, often accusing Olivier of infidelity without basis. Her insecurities fueled many heated arguments between the couple, making their home life far from peaceful. Leigh also had a reputation for being snobbish and elitist. She often looked down on people she considered to be below her, whether in terms of social status or talent. This attitude didn't win her many friends in Hollywood, a place where egos are already inflated and tensions run high. Adding to her complicated personality was her struggle with bipolar disorder, which was not well understood at the time. While this condition likely contributed to her erratic behavior, it doesn't entirely excuse the way she treated people. Many who worked with her felt that she used her mental health struggles as a license to mistreat others. Cary Grant. He had a public persona that was almost too good to be true, and in many ways, it was. While he dazzled audiences with his good looks and effortless charisma, those who knew him personally were often subjected to a different side of him, a side that was far from charming. Grant was known for his controlling tendencies, especially in his romantic relationships. His marriage to actress Diane Cannon serves as a prime example. According to Cannon, Grant was emotionally abusive and tried to control every aspect of her life, from what she wore to who she talked to. His controlling behavior was so severe that it led to the end of their marriage and left emotional scars that took years to heal. His colleagues didn't escape his difficult personality either. During the filming of His Girl Friday, it said that he demanded to be filmed from specific angles to showcase his good side, much to the annoyance of the crew and even the director, Howard Hawks. His vanity was well known in the industry, and he wasn't above making life difficult for others to maintain his image. Grant was also known for his frugality, which often bordered on stinginess. Despite being one of the highest-paid actors of his time, he was notorious for avoiding picking up the check at dinners and even charged fans for autographs. This behavior was in stark contrast to the generous and affable image he portrayed on screen. Moreover, Grant had a complicated relationship with his own identity. Born Archibald Leach in Bristol, England, he went to great lengths to distance himself from his working-class background, including changing his accent and even his name. Those who reminded him of his past or questioned his carefully crafted image were met with hostility. While Cary Grant's on-screen persona made him a Hollywood legend, his off-screen behavior revealed a complex and often difficult man. His story serves as a cautionary tale that behind the most charming smiles can lie a host of insecurities and dark tendencies. Frank Sinatra, also known as Old Blue Eyes, was a titan in the entertainment industry. With a career spanning 6 decades, he left an indelible mark on music, film, and television. However, Sinatra was not just known for his velvety voice and charismatic stage presence. He was also infamous for his volatile temper and sometimes abrasive behavior. One of the most talked about aspects of Sinatra's personality was his association with the Rat Pack, a group of entertainers known for their hard-partying lifestyle. While the Rat Pack's antics were often seen as charming, Sinatra's role as the unofficial leader sometimes took a darker turn. He was known to be controlling and would often berate members who didn't toe the line, leading to strained relationships within the group. Sinatra's temper wasn't just reserved for his friends, it extended to his professional life as well. He was notorious for clashing with directors, producers, and even fellow actors. During the filming of From Here to Eternity, it's said that he got into heated arguments with the director, Fred Zinnemann, demanding that scenes be shot his way. His behavior was considered so problematic that many studios were hesitant to work with him, despite his immense talent. His relationships with women were also a point of contention. Sinatra was married 4 times, and his affairs were numerous. His marriage to Ava Gardner was particularly tumultuous, marked by explosive arguments and alleged infidelity on both sides. Sinatra's treatment of women in his life often raised eyebrows, as he was known to be possessive and jealous, traits that didn't sit well with many. But perhaps the most controversial aspect of Sinatra's life was his alleged ties to organized crime. While never proven, these connections have been widely reported and discussed, adding a layer of menace to his already complex personality. His friendships with figures known to be involved in criminal activities did little to dispel these rumors. In public settings, Sinatra was known to lose his temper with fans and even journalists. There are numerous accounts of him lashing out at people who he felt had crossed a line, whether it was a fan approaching him at an inopportune moment or a journalist asking a question he didn't like. Despite these flaws, Sinatra's contributions to music and film are undeniable. He remains an icon, but like many icons, his legacy is a complicated one, filled with moments of brilliance and instances of behavior that were less than admirable. In the end, Sinatra was a man of contrasts, capable of immense kindness but also prone to bouts of anger and pettiness, making him a fascinating, if flawed, figure in the annals of entertainment history. Picture this. You're an aspiring actor, fresh off the bus in Los Angeles, starry-eyed with dreams of making it big in Hollywood. The palm trees, the mansions, the red carpets, it's everything you've ever dreamed of. But there's a shadowy side to this city of dreams, secrets that the top Hollywood producers whisper about behind closed doors. You start hearing whispers, murmurs of certain practices, certain topics Hollywood producers will never dare discuss publicly. Why? Because acknowledging them could shatter the very foundation of the entertainment industry. It's more than just the casting couch or the competitive nature of auditions. It's something deeper, more sinister. You think to yourself, is this the price of fame? Are these the unspoken rules I must navigate? Dive with me into the enigmatic underbelly of Hollywood, where we unveil what producers won't ever talk about. This might just be the most riveting story you've never heard. They manipulate contracts, read the fine print, everyone advises. But when you are an aspiring and talented actor trying to break into the Hollywood industry, you may not really care about agreements or the fine print. All you want is to make some money and get some recognition so you can get other opportunities. Producers know this, and sadly, they use this to their advantage and their advantage only. A lot of Hollywood producers have been known to find great actors and actresses and prey on their naivety. They work on projects with some of these actors and pay them stipends, even when the movie project does really well. By the time the actor knows what's going on, it is already too late and they have to lick their own wounds. But you do not have to take my word for it. Let's expose some of the culprits, shall we? Ever heard of the 1986 movie Aliens? Or perhaps Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows in 2011, these movies were produced by the same man, John Richardson, and while he has been given a lot of accolades for his work, his dark side is that he exploits actors. One glaring example of an exploitative contract in the case of Megan Parker, a talented young actress with dreams of making it big in Hollywood. She auditioned for a supporting role in a promising independent film, only to find herself caught in a web of deceit. The producer, John Richardson, preyed on her lack of industry experience and offered her an unfair contract with unfavorable terms. The pay rate offered was well below the industry standard, and the contract included an exploitative clause that prevented her from pursuing any other acting opportunities for the duration of the film's production. Megan Parker was way too new to the game to know what she was getting herself into, but when she found out she had been ripped off, it was too late. She had signed the contract and was bound by the agreement. Another notable case where producers exploit actors is the notable case of Academy Award-winning actress Emma Thompson. However, in this case, things didn't go quite as the producer, Robert Harrison, had planned. Thompson had signed on for a leading role in a highly anticipated film, only to discover that the contract limited her creative input and forced her to accept a significantly reduced pay rate. In most other cases, actors usually bow to the whims of the producer, but Thompson was not going to take this lying down. Unwilling to compromise her artistic integrity, she took a brave stand and negotiated fiercely with Harrison, eventually securing more favorable terms and preserving her independence as an actor. Sadly, cases like this where the actor wins are usually very rare. As a matter of fact, a lot of these greedy producers get away with their exploitation and none is the wiser. According to sources, some actually love to look out for desperate yet talented young actors and then feed them soothing words about how they would become stars if they accepted the contract. They make the contract look good, and because the actor is new and has no legal representation, they sign it in excitement and eventually get trapped in the web of lies the producer has woven.
An unravelable web.
Even worse is that as many cases are out there, they are only the reported ones. There are likely to be hundreds more cases like this that never see the light of day as a result of either the actor's shame or the producer's influence. In the grand scheme of things, a lot of producers are guilty of this evil but will never share it with the world. They also force the actors not to share their stories, and this is one of the dark secrets that they keep under wraps. But perhaps this is a better evil when compared to the next industry secret that producers will never tell anyone. They exchange movie roles for time in the sheets. Let's face it, Hollywood is probably the most competitive industry on the planet. Millions aspire, but only a few dozen eventually make it in. On the path leading to Hollywood success, there are a lot of obstacles and stumbling blocks in your way, and this is why we always celebrate anyone who makes it in and steals our hearts with their amazing talent. As the American dream depicts, you can make it in America if you work hard and remain persistent, right? Wrong. To a very large extent, producers have a huge influence and they decide who gets in and who doesn't. Seems reasonable, doesn't it? The only problem is that while some of these producers base the casting on talents, some do so based on other talents outside of acting. These producers reportedly prey on young women aspiring to make it in Hollywood, and they are always on the lookout for beautiful young women who are desperate enough to satisfy their sick desires. How do they do it, you ask? Well, it's said to start at some exclusive parties and events that double as their hunting grounds. They term it as exclusive parties, and almost everyone who's anyone in Hollywood shows up. Rationally, this would be Candyland for any actress aspiring to get opportunities in Hollywood, and they know this, so they simply throw this big party and wait. Sure enough, hopeful actresses show up and soon the whole place is littered with them, like moths to bright lights. And then these unscrupulous producers swing into action. They shower these hopeful actresses with attention, charm, and promises of stardom. They would say anything to get these women excited and even more hopeful. It's a deadly dance of ambition and vulnerability, and these women find themselves caught in a web where the desire for success blinds them to the hidden price they may have to pay. Allegedly, some of these producers would subtly propose a transaction between them and the talent desperate for a chance to prove themselves. The transaction is obviously outside the confines of professionalism and talent. Something more personal and intimate involves them meeting the producers at a hotel. A lot of these actresses are blindsided by this request, but by then it is too late. They are threatened if they refuse and told they will never get another opportunity with any other producer because they will badmouth and blacklist them. Given not much of a choice, these young hopefuls are lured into a deceitful trap between the devil and the deep blue sea. This occurrence is more common than most people imagine, and it is still whispered around in the industry today. The young hopefuls have no choice but to succumb and keep silent afterward, no matter how disturbed they feel about it. It also does not help that these producers are so wealthy and powerful, and so even when the producers don't eventually give them these roles, nothing is said and done against them. Silence is maintained because the victims fear the consequences of speaking up against producers so revered and respected. Producers discriminate in sharing profits. If we are being honest, we all have our favorite actors and actresses from our favorite movies. For some reason, we prefer them to all others, and we can decide to watch a movie just because they are in it. But it turns out that some Hollywood producers secretly have favorite actors in the industry, and when it comes to sharing profit, they tend to favor their favorites and give the other actors significantly lower payouts. This particular secret was still largely unknown until the controversy behind the film American Hustle. In this captivating drama, several actors embarked on a journey that would change their lives forever. Jeremy Renner and Bradley Cooper, both talented and established in their craft, stepped into the shoes of their characters, hoping to bring them to life on the silver screen. Little did they know that behind the scenes, a different script was being written, one of unequal compensation and shattered expectations. As the cameras rolled and the story unraveled, the cast of American Hustle soon discovered a startling truth. While their co-stars, Jennifer Lawrence and Amy Adams, basked in the glow of fame and fortune, Renner and Cooper found themselves standing in the shadows of inequity. It was revealed that they had received a significantly smaller percentage of the film's profits compared to their female counterparts. The curtain lifted, and the spotlight illuminated the dark reality that lurked beneath the film. The American Hustle profit-sharing dispute became a battle cry, echoing across the industry, shedding light on the pervasive issue of pay disparity. This real-life drama drew attention to the systemic inequities that had long plagued Hollywood. With the stage set and the truth exposed, a call for change reverberated through the hearts and minds of actors and audiences alike. The question arose, why were talented individuals, equally dedicated to their craft, receiving unequal compensation? The answer, it seemed, lay in the twisted webs of favoritism and the invisible hand of power, the producers. There was reason to believe that the producers of the film purposely dispensed the profits that way due to favoritism and no other cogent reason. Allowing controlled substances on set. Sure, every producer wants their star actors to be at peak performance on set and deliver well, but a hushed industry secret is that sometimes some producers go a little too far in boosting their actors' morale. It was whispered among the elite circles that the stars, those A-list luminaries that graced our screens, were bestowed with an endless supply of their favorite vice. The rumor mill churned with tales of a clandestine arrangement between the silver screen and their beloved performers. But the truth was far stranger than fiction. One day, legendary actor Dennis Quaid stepped forward, shedding light on this mysterious underworld. He dared to reveal the hidden truths. Dennis confessed to a casual addiction to coke, a shadow that once loomed over his rise to stardom. It all began when he embarked on his journey to the City of Angels in 1974, innocent and curious. In those early days, he dabbled with the controlled substance, a mere taste of what was to come, but it wasn't until he secured roles in mainstream films that the grip tightened and the allure of the white powder intensified. Coke, as he disclosed, held a secret place in the budgets of these movies, camouflaged under the name petty cash. It was a cunning disguise, ensuring that the substance-fueled sets remained shrouded in secrecy. Dennis Quaid confessed that the sets themselves became havens for the indulgence of this powerful substance. It was freely distributed, passed around like candy, for it had become the norm, an unspoken ritual that bound the actors and actresses together. In the intoxicating haze of those moments, Dennis Quaid unknowingly danced with his own downfall. Reflecting upon those tumultuous times, the actor admitted that his addiction to coke had been one of his gravest mistakes. It had torn apart the very fabric of his existence, leaving no stone unturned. The bright lights that once illuminated his path had dimmed, replaced by a haunting darkness that threatened to consume him entirely. But Dennis Quaid was not alone in this tumultuous journey. Even the iconic Jack Nicholson, a man who had charmed audiences with his enigmatic presence, had his own tale to tell. In a candid interview back in 1980, he nonchalantly remarked, "Drugs ain't no big thing." It was a bold proclamation, a testament to his unabashed love for getting high, a pursuit that occupied his attention for 4 glorious days every week. The Hollywood producers, those puppet masters of the silver screen, held the strings that controlled the destiny of their stars. They crafted an environment where the allure of controlled substances could flourish and where the actors and actresses could reach unprecedented heights of performance. They have fixers on speed dial. If you think about it, Hollywood is a business. Everyone you see in the industry may be there for the passion, but the money is a really huge motivating factor, from the actors to the directors and most certainly the producers. However, in the business of Hollywood, the public decides what sells and what doesn't. And one of the things that just does not sell are actors with scandals. It is bad for business, and these producers will do anything to get rid of scandals around the actors they want to work with. Now, admittedly, this is not so bad, but they would go to any lengths. Supposing an actress was working on a project and a scandal hits, the producers are put in a very bad spot. If they continue with the actress, the project is doomed to fail, and ultimately, it is too late to stop. So what do? They call a fixer, someone who is skilled at making problems go away. Michael Citrick was one of Hollywood's greatest fixers, and this was only underground knowledge. Citrick is a seasoned professional in the industry, known for his skill in turning negative stories in the press into positive ones. He has been labeled as a spinmeister, demonstrating his expertise in reshaping public narratives. Over the years, Citrick has successfully handled the reputation management of numerous high-profile clients, such as David Lee Roth and the controversial NFL quarterback Michael Vick. When it comes to handling controversies, Citrick excels. If a celebrity finds themselves bombarded with negative press, there's no doubt that Citrick is the go-to person they would want by their side. His ability to tackle difficult situations head-on is his greatest strength. You might notice a sudden surge of positive articles about a famous individual who has been caught in a compromising situation, and it's highly probable that Citrick, or someone similar to him, is diligently working behind the scenes. In essence, Citrick's expertise lies in crafting a new narrative, one that highlights the positive aspects and minimizes the impact of negative events. He understands the power of perception and works tirelessly to shape it in favor of his clients. By utilizing various strategic methods, Citrick helps his clients regain control over their public image and navigate the tumultuous waters of media scrutiny. And most Hollywood producers have a Citrick on speed dial. They mount an unhealthy amount of pressure on their stars. In their pursuit of ephemeral beauty, Hollywood starlets are not only judged by their adoring fans and the unforgiving public, but also by the agents and producers who wield their power like a double-edged sword. Like a relentless storm, these unseen forces push them towards perilous paths, demanding that they shed pounds in the most perilous of ways. But this is not just a claim. As a matter of fact, Demi Lovato backs this up when she recalls a time when she was younger. She would stare at her belly and ponder if it would ever be taut and flat. As the sands of time flowed, she finally found her way to Hollywood, and there her eating disorder was not only noticed, but encouraged by some of the producers she worked with. Naomi Watts is another example. Known for her ethereal presence, she dared to share a harrowing truth. In their quest for her perfection, she was forced to starve, sacrificing her own well-being upon the altar of a red carpet appearance. But let us not forget the voices that rise from within this realm, like whispers of defiance against the engulfing tide. Ashley Graham, a beacon of resilience, divulged a chilling encounter with a producer whose motives reeked of malevolence. As he waved crisp $20 bills before her very eyes, he hissed promises of greater fortune if only she would shed her weight. Many other actresses have stories like these. It is the dark secret that the producers keep close to their hearts. Some producers may be involved in organized crime. Amid the glimmering lights of the Sunset Strip, one establishment stood out in Hollywood's lore, the Trocadero, affectionately known as the Troc. This legendary hotspot became a nexus where stars, producers, and mobsters crossed paths, blurring the lines between the silver screen and the criminal underworld. Here, amidst the clinking glasses and laughter, celebrities and studio heads found themselves rubbing shoulders with figures like Mickey Cohen, a notorious gangster with deep ties to organized crime. The Trocadero's allure lay in its ability to draw in the rich and famous, creating an atmosphere of mystery and intrigue. The convergence of Hollywood elites and criminal masterminds painted a vivid picture of a world where fame and infamy intersected. While the stories of these encounters remain largely anecdotal, they hint at a symbiotic relationship that fueled speculation about the entanglement of organized crime within Hollywood's power structures. The reach of organized crime in Hollywood did not dissipate with the passing of the Golden Age. In the 1970s, whispers of nefarious dealings emerged with links to the production and distribution of major films. One such case was Bryanston Pictures, a company entangled in controversy and rumored connections to a prominent mafia crime family. Bryanston Pictures found itself in the spotlight due to its involvement in the release of the cult horror classic, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The film, directed by Tobe Hooper, sent shockwaves through audiences and became an iconic symbol of the horror genre. However, behind the scenes, Bryanston Pictures was dogged by allegations of mafia involvement, creating a sinister aura that surrounded its operations. While the exact nature of the connections remains speculative, these allegations perpetuated a perception of organized crime's influence in Hollywood. The potential infiltration of the film industry and producers by criminal elements conjured a chilling notion that the shadows cast by the silver screen extended beyond mere storytelling. Hiring paparazzi. When actors become subjects of paparazzi attention, they are thrust into the limelight, leading to the construction of a persona that is both relatable and fascinating to the public. And Hollywood producers are well aware of this fact, and so they use it to their advantage, hiring paparazzi for the actors they want to work with. But why? Well, for one, paparazzi images, accompanied by media coverage, depict actors in various situations, ranging from red carpet events to private outings. This curated portrayal of actors helps shape public perceptions, often aligning with the characters they portray on screen. The audience begins to associate the actor's personal life with their on-screen roles, thereby creating a deeper emotional connection with their performances. But sometimes, these products take the paparazzi thing a little too far. Controversy. While the intention behind hiring paparazzi is to generate positive publicity, controversy can inadvertently arise from their intrusive tactics. In some instances, scandals and personal struggles become fodder for tabloids, attracting widespread media attention. While this type of publicity may be detrimental to an actor's public image in the short term, it can paradoxically generate increased interest in their future projects. The public's fascination with scandal and redemption narratives often translates into higher viewership, as audiences are drawn to witness an actor's ability to overcome challenges both on and off screen. The practice of producers hiring paparazzi for the purpose of enhancing an actor's popularity is not without controversy. Critics argue that it invades an individual's privacy and perpetuates a culture of intrusion and harassment. Moreover, they contend that it undermines the authenticity of an actor's image and fosters a reliance on manufactured publicity rather than genuine talent. Balancing ethical concerns with the demands of the entertainment industry remains a challenging task for all stakeholders involved. But remember, Hollywood is a business, and these producers intend to run it well. They may be talented actors, but their skills are not the only things that their fans love about them. As a matter of fact, as far as Hollywood is concerned, fans seem to be more drawn to personalities than they are to acting skills. So what happens when the fans realize that an actor or actress isn't what they thought? What happens when one narrative changes their minds? These stars knew all too well what would happen to their careers if they messed up, so they used every means necessary to preserve their perceived personality. Joan Crawford. We all know about Joan Crawford, right? Star actress of the Golden Age, started her career as a dancer, and then eventually made it into Hollywood to dazzle her fans from all around the world. Well, that's the version that the rest of the world knows, but there's a deep secret that most people do not know, and it surrounds the beginning of Joan's career. She starred in an adult movie, and the aim was simple: to boost her acting career and get a lot of people talking about her. If word about her adult movie spread, that may be the end of Joan's career. The studio could not have that. This was when a man named Mannix entered the scene. You see, Mannix worked as a studio fixer for MGM. His job was essentially to make problems go away. It was said that using MGM's money, he went ahead to track down and buy every single copy of the tape and then destroy them all. He also spent another $100,000 to buy the original film negative, so no copy of the film could ever be made again. And so, a huge crisis was averted, and Joan was in the clear to continue her career and keep up appearances as Hollywood's golden girl. This would have been a terrible scandal, but it was covered up expertly. Loretta Young's adopted child isn't adopted. After The Call of the Wind in 1935, Loretta suddenly disappeared. No one saw her in any other film. She made no other media appearances. Granted, no shows. She fell silent. However, after 18 months, she resurfaced and decided to show the world what she had been up to in her media silence. Apparently, Loretta had decided to adopt a girl child and raise her like her own. It was her new passion, and she wanted to give that child a better life. But in reality, it turned out that Loretta had been involved sexually with Clark Gable, who was married to someone else. And on top of that, rumor had it that the encounter wasn't consensual on Loretta's part. Therefore, having a child from that union would do incredible damage to her career. So after 18 months of her disappearance, Mannix made it look like she had adopted a child, a newborn. But in fact, it was her child from her illicit encounter with Clark Gable, yet another scandal covered up. Alfred Hitchcock's obsession with his leading ladies. It was Tippi Hedren who bore the brunt of Hitchcock's fixation. As Hitchcock was riding high on the success of Psycho, he plucked the relatively unknown Hedren to star in The Birds. She became an instant sensation, but there was a catch. She was tied to a contract that left her in a vulnerable position, and to make matters worse, he made several advances towards her, all of which she resolutely rejected, and this infuriated him even more. Eventually, Hedren reached her breaking point, so one day, in a fit of frustration, she dared to call Hitchcock a fat pig and continued to spurn his advances. Little did she know this would be the spark that would ignite his relentless vendetta. He not only refused to work with her again, but also prevented her from collaborating with other directors. Despite her best efforts, Hedren's career never truly recovered from the onslaught of Hitchcock's vindictive schemes, but sadly, she could not report any of these to anyone. William Hearst's crime covered up. He was a force to be reckoned with, one of the most influential figures in the United States, and the very muse for Orson Welles' cinematic masterpiece, Citizen Kane. But beneath his veneer of power and wealth, Hearst was known to be ruthless, hot-tempered, and, on occasion, downright nasty. Now, it's only fair to assume that such a man wouldn't take news of his mistress having an affair lying down. Marian Davies, the object of Hearst's affections, was rumored to be entangled with none other than the iconic Charlie Chaplin. Instead of confronting Chaplin directly, Hearst devised an unconventional plan. He invited Chaplin and a motley crew of other film luminaries to join him on his opulent yacht. Enter Thomas Ince, a Hollywood producer specializing in Western films. His studio had once thrived, but it was now floundering. In dire need of investors, Ince boarded Hearst's yacht with the hope that this journey might be the key to turning his fortunes around. Little did he know how dramatically his fate would change. The official version of Ince's death, hurriedly printed in Hearst's newspapers, was that he had succumbed to sudden digestive problems despite prompt hospitalization. Curiously, Ince's body was immediately subjected to cremation. Yet, try as Hearst might to assert control over the narrative surrounding Ince's demise, unsettling rumors refused to be silenced. Whispers persisted that Hearst had taken aim at Chaplin, missing his mark and tragically striking Ince instead. The Los Angeles Times initially ran the headline "Movie producer shot on Hearst yacht," but it was abruptly pulled, and subsequent editions bore no mention of the shooting. William Hearst, using his power and influence, played off the whole thing and shut the mouths of anyone else who knew the truth, and the evil deed on that yacht that night was covered up. Gable in a hit and run. It's whispered in hushed tones that Eddie Mannix may have played a role in helping Clark Gable hide a dark secret. A hit-and-run incident, a tragic event that took the life of actress Tosca Rulian. Some say that Mannix, with his influential connections, orchestrated a cover-up. He allegedly persuaded an MGM screenwriter to shoulder the blame for Gable, protecting the Hollywood legend from scandal and public scrutiny. Paul Bern's death was arranged. Being a multifaceted talent at MGM, he was not only known for his work but also for being the husband of the iconic starlet, Jean Harlow. His life, however, took a dark and mysterious turn when it's said that Mannix may have played a role in his untimely demise. It's a story that tugs at the heartstrings, a man who, in the face of marital strife, saw no way out but to take his own life. The details surrounding his death have always been shrouded in mystery, but some whispers suggest that Mannix's influence might have had a hand in this tragedy, and it was covered up. Patricia Douglas was abused. Douglas, a young aspiring actress, attended a casting call that turned into a nightmarish ordeal. She was told to wear a revealing outfit and entertain the men in attendance. Shockingly, the event took a harrowing turn, with allegations of Douglas being subjected to a heinous act. When Patricia Douglas tried to seek justice against Eddie Mannix and MGM for their alleged involvement, she found herself battling not only the power of the studio but a web of deceit. It's said that other guests at the event were paid to claim that Douglas had been uncontrollably drunk, painting her as unreliable and undermining her credibility. As the day of the court hearing arrived, a cloud of mystery descended. No lawyers representing MGM and Mannix appeared, leading to a sudden dismissal of the case by a federal judge. Mannix staged George Reeves' suicide. Long before Christopher Reeve donned Superman's iconic cape, another actor, George Reeves, stepped into the role of the Man of Steel. However, George Reeves's life took a tragic turn in 1959 when he allegedly committed suicide. But what lies beneath the surface is a scandal that was covered up. You see, George Reeves was entangled in a torrid affair with the wife of the great and powerful Hollywood figure, Eddie Mannix. Surprisingly, Mannix himself was rumored to have his own share of extramarital affairs, so he turned a blind eye to the romance between Reeves and his wife. However, the plot thickens. When George Reeves decided to end the relationship, allegedly, Mannix, driven by anger and vengeance, took drastic measures. Some sources suggest that he called upon his underworld connections, the mafia, to orchestrate Reeves' murder and stage it to appear as he took his own life. Jean Harlow's involvement in husband's demise, the original blonde bombshell, had a roller coaster life in Hollywood. She skyrocketed to stardom after her appearance in Howard Hughes's film Hell's Angels. However, her personal life was tumultuous. At a tender age of 15, Harlow married her first husband, only to divorce a few years later. Her second husband met a tragic end in a gunshot accident, with speculation swirling around her involvement. This posed a significant scandal. To manage the situation, the studio coerced her into marrying cinematographer Harold Rawson, a union meant for public appeasement, quietly dissolving once the scandal faded from memory. Studio-aided abortions. Hollywood studios established secretive protocols for cases with promiscuous actresses. They were discreetly admitted to hospitals under false names for ambiguous procedures, attended solely by their private doctors, and strictly isolated from visitors. Tallulah Bankhead was one of the recipients of this practice. During her career, she was notoriously promiscuous, but she had to face a stark reality that the film studios wouldn't tolerate a pregnant star, leading her to undergo 4 abortions before reaching the age of 30, simply to save face in the streets of Hollywood. On the 30th of March 1939, at the bustling premiere of Maisie in Los Angeles, a star named Ann Sothern captivated the silver screen, embodying the vivacious and witty character that would define her legacy. Unknown to the glittering crowds and even to Sothern herself, this role would etch her name into the annals of Hollywood's golden age, yet also cast a shadow over her diverse talents and contributions. As Sothern's Maisie charmed audiences nationwide, a complex narrative unfolded off-screen, one of ambition, resilience, and the untold struggles within the gilded cages of Hollywood. This story, much like a cipher hidden in plain sight, reveals the intricate layers of an actress navigating the highs and lows of fame, battling the industry's typecasting and gender biases, all while leaving a mark subtly obscured by time. Through the lens of her career, we delve into a journey not just of a forgotten luminary, but of Hollywood itself, exploring the enigmatic legacy of Ann Sothern, whose brilliance on and off the camera remains a testament to her undervalued impact on the cinematic world. The Untold Beginning. In the brisk winter of 1909, the small town of Valley City, North Dakota, became the birthplace of a future star, Harriet Arlene Lake, known to the world as Ann Sothern. Born into a family where music and the arts were the lifeblood, her mother, Annette Wide Lake, a concert singer, and her father, Walter J. Lake, a pianist, the stage was set for Ann's entrance into the world of entertainment from her earliest days. The journey from Valley City to the glowing marquees of Hollywood was marked by a series of pivotal moments and encounters that shaped Sothern's early career. In the mid-1920s, the Lake family relocated to Minneapolis, where Ann's passion for acting took root. By the tender age of 16, Ann was already performing in local theater productions, demonstrating a natural talent that could not be ignored. The year 1927 marked a significant turning point when Ann and her mother made the bold decision to move to California. The allure of Hollywood's burgeoning film industry was irresistible, and for a young actress like Ann, it promised the fulfillment of her dreams. Yet the reality of Hollywood in the late 1920s was far from the glamorous ideal portrayed in fan magazines and on the silver screen. It was a place of fierce competition, where countless hopefuls vied for a chance to shine. Ann's early years in Hollywood were fraught with challenges. She found work where she could, taking on bit parts in films like Broadway Nights, 1927, and enduring the hardships of the Great Depression. The industry was in flux, transitioning from silent films to talkies, a shift that spelled the end of many careers. Undeterred, Ann honed her craft, studying at the Pasadena Playhouse and taking on various stage roles, all the while waiting for her breakthrough moment. That moment came in the early 1930s, though not without its trials. Ann's initial contract with Columbia Pictures ended after a year with little to show for it. However, her persistence paid off when she caught the eye of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, MGM scouts, leading to a contract with one of Hollywood's most prestigious studios. It was under MGM's banner that Ann Sothern would find her niche, not as a glamorous leading lady, but as the vivacious, quick-witted Maisie Ravier, a role that would define her career. The Maisie series, which began with Maisie, 1939, catapulted Ann to fame. Her portrayal of the smart, independent, and resourceful title character resonated with audiences, offering a blend of humor and heart that was both refreshing and relatable. The success of Maisie led to 9 sequels, securing Ann Sothern's place in Hollywood's pantheon of stars. Yet the path to stardom was not solely defined by her on-screen achievements. Behind the scenes, Ann navigated the complexities of studio politics, the fickleness of public adoration, and the personal sacrifices required by her profession. Her journey from the stages of Minneapolis to the silver screen of Hollywood is a testament to her resilience, talent, and unwavering determination to succeed against the odds. Ann Sothern's early years, marked by both struggle and triumph, laid the foundation for a career that would span over 6 decades. In those formative moments, a star was born, one whose legacy would endure long beyond her final curtain call. The Maisie controversy. In 1939, MGM introduced audiences to Maisie Ravier, a savvy and spirited showgirl with a heart of gold, portrayed with charismatic aplomb by Ann Sothern. The film Maisie was not just a hit. It spawned a series of 10 movies produced until 1947, transforming Southern from a talented actress into a household name. Yet, as the series progressed, it became a double-edged sword, both elevating and entrapping Southern within a specific persona. The character of Maisie, while beloved for her wit and resilience, became a gilded cage for Southern. The actress, whose range extended far beyond the lighthearted comedy of the Maisie series, found herself battling against the typecasting that often accompanies a recurring role. Despite her success, Southern's artistic ambitions chafed under the constraints of repeating the same character, yearning for roles that could showcase the breadth of her talent. The internal conflicts at MGM regarding the direction of the Maisie series further complicated matters. Southern frequently found herself at odds with studio executives and writers over the development of her character. She pushed for storylines that would allow Maisie to evolve, seeking depth and variety in her roles that the formulaic approach of the series seldom offered. These creative disputes highlighted the tension between the studio's commercial interests and the artistic aspirations of its contracted talent. Notable figures within MGM, including producer J. Walter Rubin, who directed the first Maisie film, initially supported Southern's vision for the character. However, Rubin's untimely death in 1942 and the studio's prioritization of consistency over creativity left Southern navigating the series' future with less support. The struggle for creative control was emblematic of a broader issue within the studio system, where actors, despite their contributions to a film's success, had limited influence over their career's trajectory. As World War II raged and the American public sought escapism in cinema, the Maisie series continued to be a profitable venture for MGM, reinforcing the studio's reluctance to alter a successful formula. Despite this, Southern's performances never waned in quality. She infused each portrayal of Maisie with freshness and vitality, a testament to her professionalism and commitment to her craft. The end of the Maisie series in 1947 did not mark the end of Southern's struggle with typecasting, but it did close a chapter on a part of her career that was both defining and restrictive. In the years that followed, Southern sought out diverse roles in film and television, demonstrating her versatility as an actress. Yet, the shadow of Maisie Ravier lingered, a reminder of the complexities of Hollywood stardom and the personal costs of professional success. Hollywood's double standards? The glimmering facade of Hollywood's golden age often masked the stark realities of its double standards, particularly when it came to gender. For actresses like Ann Southern, navigating this landscape meant contending with an industry that celebrated femininity on screen while simultaneously constraining the roles women could play, both on and off the set. As Southern's career progressed through the 1930s and 1940s, she, like many of her contemporaries, found herself caught in a paradox. On one hand, her roles in films and the Maisie series showcased strong, independent women who could hold their own against any adversity. On the other, the very industry that provided these roles imposed rigid expectations on actresses, dictating not just the characters they played but also their public and private lives. The era was marked by the enforcement of the Motion Picture Production Code, colloquially known as the Hays Code, which sought to regulate content deemed morally questionable. While it impacted all aspects of film production, the code also reinforced traditional gender roles and limited the depiction of women's independence and sexuality, affecting the types of roles available to actresses. Beyond the screen, the studio system exerted control over actresses' images, often requiring them to conform to idealized standards of beauty and comportment. Contracts could include clauses that dictated personal choices, from dating to weight management, reflecting broader societal expectations of women. These constraints were emblematic of the double standards that permeated the industry, celebrating the allure of Hollywood's leading ladies while tightly controlling their autonomy. Ann Southern's experiences reflect these contradictions. Despite her success and popularity, she too was subject to the whims of studio executives and the limitations imposed by the era's gender norms. Yet through her performances, Southern subtly challenged these conventions, bringing complexity and strength to her roles that resonated with audiences and hinted at a broader spectrum of female experience than Hollywood was often willing to acknowledge. The double standards of Hollywood's golden age offer a window into the complexities of gender, power, and representation in an era that shaped modern cinema. As we look back on this period through the lens of contemporary understanding, the stories of actresses like Ann Sothern gain new dimensions, highlighting not just the challenges they faced, but also their contributions to the evolving landscape of film and culture. The Secret Loves. In the whirlwind of Hollywood's golden age, where the personal often intertwined with the public, Ann Sothern's romantic life unfolded beneath the studio's watchful eye. Her marriages, notably to Roger Pryor in 1936 and Robert Sterling in 1943, were not just personal milestones, but events that mirrored the complexities and expectations of a star under the studio system's glare. Ann's first marriage to Roger Pryor, a fellow actor, became a subject of public fascination. The couple married on September 18, 1936, in a ceremony that, while glamorous, hinted at the pressures they faced under the Hollywood spotlight. Their union, celebrated in the press, also underscored the challenges of maintaining a relationship when both partners were in the demanding world of show business. Despite their efforts, the marriage succumbed to these pressures, ending in divorce in 1943. Almost immediately following her divorce from Pryor, Sothern married Robert Sterling, another actor whose career was on the rise. Their marriage on May 23, 1943, was seen as a fresh start for Sothern, who sought stability and happiness away from the film set's demands. Yet this relationship, too, was subject to the strains inherent in Hollywood marriages. The couple welcomed a daughter, Tisha Sterling, in 1944, which brought joy to their lives, but also new challenges. The marriage ultimately ended in divorce in 1949, leaving Sothern to navigate the complexities of life as a single mother and leading lady. Beyond her marriages, rumors of Sothern's relationships and associations filled the gossip columns. Her close friendships within the industry with figures such as Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz provided fodder for the press, highlighting the blurred lines between personal affiliations and public perceptions in Hollywood's tightly knit community. Sothern's romantic life, though marked by its highs and lows, was characterized by a resilience and independence that mirrored her on-screen personas. Despite the studio system's attempts to manage its stars' images, Sothern navigated her personal life with a level of discretion that allowed her to maintain a degree of privacy, a rare feat in an era where stars' lives were open books. Her experiences reflect the broader narrative of women in Hollywood during the mid-20th century who balanced their careers, personal desires, and the industry's expectations. Sothern's journey through love, heartbreak, and motherhood offers a window into the realities behind the glamour, revealing a woman who, despite the public's gaze, sought to carve out her own path in love and in life. Blacklisting fears. The late 1940s and 1950s were tumultuous times for Hollywood. The HUAC, established to investigate alleged disloyalty and subversive activities on the part of private citizens, public employees, and those organizations suspected of having communist ties, turned its eye toward Hollywood in 1947. The entertainment industry, known for its liberal leanings and high-profile personalities, became a focal point for accusations of communist infiltration. Ann Sothern, whose career was at its peak during this period, found herself in an industry rife with fear and suspicion. While Sothern herself was not called before the HUAC, nor was she blacklisted, the atmosphere of the era inevitably affected all who worked in Hollywood. The blacklist, a result of the hearings, led to the shunning of actors, writers, directors, and others accused of communist affiliations, many of whom were blacklisted based on rumors or associations rather than concrete evidence. During this time, Sothern continued her work in both film and television, including starring in The Ann Sothern Show, which ran from 1958 to 1961. However, the climate of fear and the industry's self-censorship meant that topics that were deemed controversial or too politically charged were avoided. This environment limited the scope of creative expression and the types of roles available, even for those not directly implicated by the HUAC hearings. Notable figures during this era, such as screenwriter Dalton Trumbo and actor Charlie Chaplin, faced significant professional and personal repercussions due to their alleged communist ties or leftist sympathies. Trumbo was one of the Hollywood 10, a group of writers and directors who were jailed and blacklisted for their refusal to answer the HUAC's inquiries regarding their political affiliations. The impact of the Red Scare on Hollywood was profound, creating an environment where suspicion prevailed over creativity, and careers were often collateral damage in the fight against perceived communist influence. For actors like Ann Sothern, navigating this landscape required caution and resilience, as the implications of being associated with blacklisted individuals or ideologies could be career-ending. The Forgotten Pioneer. Ann Sothern's career trajectory took a pioneering turn when she transitioned from film to television, a move that was both innovative and risky at the time. In the early 1950s, television was still an emerging medium, often looked down upon by Hollywood's film elite. Sothern, however, saw an opportunity. In 1953, she starred in Private Secretary, a television series that ran until 1957. The show was a success, showcasing Sothern's comedic timing and charm to a new audience and proving that television could offer substantial roles for film actors. What is less known about Ann Sothern's venture into television is her role as a producer. The Ann Sothern Show, which aired from 1958 to 1961, was not just a vehicle for her acting talents. Sothern also took on an active role in its production. This was at a time when female producers were a rarity in Hollywood. Her involvement in the production aspects of the show marked her as one of the first women in television to take on such a role, paving the way for future generations of female producers and directors in the industry. Sothern's pioneering work extended beyond her on-screen roles and production work. She was also instrumental in negotiating the rights and syndication deals for her television shows, demonstrating an understanding of the business side of entertainment that was ahead of her time. Her foresight and negotiations ensured that The Ann Sothern Show and Private Secretary would be enjoyed by audiences for years to come through reruns and syndication, a concept that was still in its infancy in the 1950s. Despite these significant contributions, Ann Sothern's role as a pioneer in the television industry is often overshadowed by her film career and her portrayal of Maisie. Yet, her work in television, both in front of and behind the camera, highlights her versatility, foresight, and willingness to embrace new challenges. Ann Sothern's pioneering efforts in the television industry are a testament to her innovative spirit and her significant yet often overlooked contributions to the medium's development. Her work laid the groundwork for future actors and producers, demonstrating the potential of television as a platform for creative expression and business acumen. The Final Act: A Legacy in Shadows. As the golden era of Hollywood cinema began to wane, Ann Sothern's career entered what could be considered its final act. By the 1960s, the landscape of the entertainment industry had shifted dramatically, with television becoming a dominant force and the studio system that had once ruled supreme undergoing significant changes. During this period, Sothern's work transitioned more towards television, including a notable role in The Ann Sothern Show, 1958-1961, which solidified her place in the pantheon of television stars. However, it was her return to film in the 1980s that marked a poignant moment in Sothern's career. In 1987, she received critical acclaim for her role in The Whales of August, a film that featured screen legends Bette Davis and Lillian Gish. Sothern's performance in this film at the age of 78 showcased her enduring talent and versatility as an actress. Despite the accolades, including an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress, this late-career resurgence did not fully rekindle the widespread recognition one might have expected for such a storied career. Sothern's legacy, particularly in the later years of her life, is reflective of the broader narrative of many Golden Age Hollywood actors whose contributions have faded into the background of popular cultural memory. Her work, spanning over 5 decades, contributed significantly to both film and television, yet the full extent of her impact is often overlooked in retrospectives of the era. Ann Sothern passed away on March 15, 2001, in Ketchum, Idaho, leaving behind a body of work that spans a critical period in American entertainment history. Her journey from the stages of North Dakota to the silver screen of Hollywood and onto the television sets of America's living rooms is a testament to her adaptability, talent, and perseverance. While Sothern's name may not be as readily recognized today as some of her contemporaries, her legacy endures through her contributions to the evolution of acting in film and television. Her pioneering work in television production, her memorable performances across multiple decades, and her ability to navigate the changing tides of the entertainment industry mark her as a significant figure in Hollywood history. Jean Arthur's journey through Hollywood was unlike any other. With a career that spanned over 3 decades, she delivered performances that have since become benchmarks of the golden age of cinema. Yet, for someone so visible on the silver screen, Arthur was a figure of profound privacy, her off-screen life a stark contrast to the characters she so vivaciously brought to life. But who was Jean Arthur truly? Beyond the laughter and the acclaim, beyond the roles that made her a household name, there lay a woman of complexity, a soul who sought solace away from the cacophony of fame. Arthur's reluctance to embrace her celebrity status, her battles with anxiety, and her eventual retreat from Hollywood form a narrative as compelling as any of her films. This video seeks to peel back the layers of Jean Arthur's quiet radiance, to explore the dichotomy of a woman who was both a beacon of talent on screen and an enigma off it. From her early days in silent films to her unforgettable roles in classics directed by the likes of Frank Capra and George Stevens, we delve into the life of a woman who, despite her best efforts to remain out of the limelight, left an indelible mark on the industry and on the hearts of those who watched her. The rise of Jean Arthur. Jean Arthur's journey to becoming a beloved icon of Hollywood's golden age is a tale of resilience, talent, and an unmistakable voice that captivated audiences worldwide. Born Gladys Georgiana Green in 1900 in Plattsburgh, New York, Arthur's early life was marked by frequent moves, reflecting a restless spirit that would later define her career. Her entry into the world of acting was not a straightforward path. It was paved with the kind of determination and grit that characterized many of Hollywood's self-made stars. Arthur's foray into acting began in the early 1920s, a time when the film industry was undergoing significant transformations. The silent era was in full swing, and Hollywood was a burgeoning hub of creativity and innovation. Arthur's initial roles were small, often uncredited parts in silent films, where her distinctive presence began to draw attention. Despite the limitations of these early roles, Arthur's persistence paid off, leading to more substantial parts that showcased her range and depth as an actress. The transition from silent films to talkies in the late 1920s and early 1930s was a tumultuous period for many actors, whose careers were abruptly ended by the new demand for a different kind of on-screen presence. However, for Arthur, the advent of sound cinema provided an opportunity to leverage her most unique asset, her voice. Described as a mix of a squeak and a melodious lilt, Arthur's voice became her signature, setting her apart from her contemporaries and endearing her to audiences and critics alike. Arthur's breakthrough came with her role in The Whole Town's Talking, 1935, a performance that showcased her comedic timing and charm. However, it was her collaboration with director Frank Capra that catapulted her to stardom. Films like Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, 1936, and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, 1939, not only solidified her status as a leading lady, but also highlighted her ability to bring depth and authenticity to her characters, traits that would define her career. Despite her success, Arthur's relationship with fame was complex. Known for her reclusive nature and discomfort with the Hollywood publicity machine, Arthur's off-screen life was shrouded in mystery, a stark contrast to the vivacious and approachable characters she portrayed. The craft of comedy. Jean Arthur's ascent to the zenith of Hollywood stardom was marked by her unparalleled mastery of the screwball comedy genre, a style of film that became immensely popular during the 1930s and 1940s. This genre, known for its fast-paced dialogue, complex plots, and blend of slapstick with a sophisticated wit, found its perfect muse in Arthur. Her performances in Mr. Deeds Goes to Town and The Lady Eve are emblematic of her ability to navigate the intricate dynamics of screwball comedy, showcasing her talent for combining wit, charm, and a palpable sense of vulnerability. Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, 1936, directed by Frank Capra, was a pivotal film in Arthur's career. Cast opposite Gary Cooper, Arthur played the role of Babe Bennett, a sharp-witted reporter who falls for Longfellow deeds. Cooper, a simple man who inherits a vast fortune. Arthur's portrayal of Bennett was a masterclass in the screwball heroine archetype, intelligent, independent, and morally complex. Her on-screen chemistry with Cooper was electric, and her performance earned critical acclaim, solidifying her status as one of the era's leading ladies in comedy. However, it was perhaps her role in The Lady Eve, 1941, directed by Preston Sturges, that fully showcased Arthur's comedic genius. though Barbara Stanwyck played the lead in The Lady Eve. Arthur's roles in similar screwball comedies of the era, such as The More the Merrier, 1943, demonstrated her adeptness at this genre. Her ability to deliver rapid-fire dialogue with precision, coupled with her comedic timing and the inherent warmth she brought to her characters, made her performances stand out. Arthur's characters often challenged societal norms, embodying a modern woman's spirit who was both assertive and feminine. Arthur's unique appeal in the screwball comedy genre lay in her ability to blend humor with heart. Her characters were not mere caricatures, they were imbued with a depth and complexity that resonated with audiences. Arthur herself brought a sense of authenticity to these roles, drawing on her personal experiences and inner resilience. Off-screen, Arthur was known for her shyness and aversion to the Hollywood limelight, traits that contrasted sharply with the confident women she portrayed on screen. This juxtaposition between her private self and her public persona added layers to her performances, making her characters all the more compelling. Arthur's contribution to the screwball comedy genre extended beyond her individual performances. She helped define the archetype of the screwball heroine, a woman who was equal parts intellect, humor, and heart. This archetype would influence countless films and performances in the genre, leaving a legacy that endures in cinematic history. Jean Arthur's mastery of screwball comedy, highlighted in films like Mr. Deeds Goes to Town and through her body of work in the genre, showcases her as one of the definitive leading ladies of her era. Her ability to convey wit, charm, and vulnerability on screen not only endeared her to audiences, but also cemented her place in Hollywood's golden age as a symbol of comedic and dramatic excellence. Arthur and Capra, a cinematic partnership. The collaboration between Jean Arthur and Frank Capra is one of Hollywood's most celebrated director-actor partnerships, emblematic of a period when cinema was as much about entertainment as it was about conveying poignant social messages. This partnership flourished during the 1930s, a time of significant social and economic upheaval in the United States. Capra, with his deeply ingrained belief in the goodness of the common man and his critique of unchecked power, found in Arthur not just a talented actress, but a conduit for his themes of integrity, resilience, and social justice. Their collaboration produced several films, but none more significant than Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, 1939, a film that has come to define American ideals of democracy and individual agency. Arthur played Clarissa Saunders, a savvy and cynical secretary who helps the film's protagonist, Jefferson Smith, played by James Stewart, navigate the complexities of American politics. Arthur's performance, marked by a blend of skepticism and eventual inspiration, perfectly complemented Capra's vision of an America where ordinary individuals can make a difference. The success of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington was due in no small part to the synergy between Capra's direction and Arthur's performance. Capra's socially conscious storytelling, which often tackled themes of corruption, media manipulation, and the loss of innocence, found its ideal expression in Arthur's characters, who often embodied a blend of idealism and pragmatism. This dynamic allowed Capra's films to resonate on a deeply emotional level, with Arthur serving as the relatable, human element in his grand narratives. Arthur's collaboration with Capra was not limited to Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Their partnership also produced Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, 1936, and You Can't Take It With You, 1938, films that similarly explored themes of simplicity, honesty, and the value of community. In each of these films, Arthur's performances were critical to grounding Capra's ideals in relatable human terms. Her ability to convey complex emotions with subtlety and depth provided the perfect foil to Capra's larger-than-life characters and situations. Beyond her work with Capra, Arthur's career was also marked by her collaboration with another legendary director, John Ford, in The Whole Town's Talking, 1935. While her partnership with Ford was not as extensive as with Capra, it further showcased her versatility as an actress and her ability to adapt to different directorial styles. Ford, known for his portrayal of American myths and landscapes, utilized Arthur's talent to explore themes of identity and redemption, adding another layer to her already diverse career. The Reluctant Star. Jean Arthur's luminous presence on the silver screen belied a deeply private nature, a paradox that defined her career and personal life. Despite her undeniable talent and the acclaim that came with it, Arthur was known for her shyness and aversion to the Hollywood limelight, a reluctance that stood in stark contrast to the bold, spirited characters she portrayed. This chapter delves into the complexities of Arthur's stardom, exploring how her reluctance to embrace fame contrasted sharply with her on-screen persona and professional success. Arthur's preference for privacy over public accolades was well known within the industry. Unlike many of her contemporaries, she eschewed the typical trappings of Hollywood fame, rarely appearing at public events or participating in the studio's publicity efforts beyond what was contractually required. Interviews with Arthur were scarce, and she was known to be uncomfortable with the fanfare and attention that came with her profession. This reticence extended to her personal life, which she guarded fiercely, leading to much speculation and mystery surrounding the actress. Despite her aversion to the spotlight, Arthur's talent could not be contained. On screen, she exuded a natural warmth and charisma, endearing her to audiences and making her one of the most beloved actresses of her time. Her ability to convey strength, vulnerability, and humor, often simultaneously, made her performances compelling and relatable. Arthur's work with directors like Frank Capra highlighted her unique appeal, showcasing her as the quintessential everywoman who embodied American ideals of integrity and resilience. The contrast between Arthur's public and private selves raises questions about the nature of stardom and the expectations placed on public figures. Arthur's career coincided with the golden age of Hollywood, a time when stars were expected to maintain a certain image and availability to their fans. Her reluctance to participate in this aspect of her profession was seen as unconventional, even problematic, by studio executives who relied on star power to promote their films. Yet, Arthur's insistence on maintaining her privacy can also be viewed as a form of resistance against the commodification of celebrity and an assertion of her autonomy. Arthur's shyness and preference for privacy did not diminish her professional dedication. Colleagues and directors often spoke of her commitment to her craft, her meticulous preparation for roles, and her ability to transform once the cameras were rolling. This professionalism, coupled with her natural talent, ensured that Arthur's career thrived despite her aversion to the spotlight. Pioneering feminine archetypes. In an era when women on screen were often relegated to secondary or stereotypical roles, Arthur's characters stood out for their strength, intelligence, and independence. Her portrayal of such roles contributed to evolving representations of women in cinema, offering audiences a glimpse of a more nuanced and empowered female identity. Arthur's characters were often women ahead of their time, navigating professional and personal challenges with a blend of resilience and grace. In Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, she plays a savvy reporter who, despite her initial cynicism, reveals a deep capacity for empathy and integrity. Similarly, in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Arthur portrays a seasoned political aide who becomes an invaluable ally to James Stewart's idealistic senator, showcasing her character's intelligence and political acumen. These roles, among others, positioned Arthur as an actress capable of conveying complex female experiences, breaking away from the damsel-in-distress archetype prevalent in many films of the era. Arthur's on-screen personas resonated with the emerging sensibilities of a society on the cusp of significant social change. The 1930s and 1940s were decades marked by economic turmoil, war, and the beginning of shifts in gender dynamics. Women were entering the workforce in unprecedented numbers, and their roles within the family and society at large were beginning to evolve. Arthur's characters reflected this shift, embodying the aspirations and challenges of a generation of women seeking greater autonomy and recognition. Moreover, Arthur's collaboration with directors like Frank Capra further amplified her impact on the portrayal of women in cinema. Capra's films, known for their social commentary and exploration of American ideals, provided Arthur with a platform to showcase her range as an actress and to bring to life characters that were both relatable and inspirational. Her performances in Capra's films not only entertained, but also provoked thought about the role of women in society, their capacity for leadership, and their right to pursue personal and professional fulfillment. Jean Arthur's contribution to cinema extends beyond her individual performances to include her influence on the portrayal of women on screen. By taking on roles that challenge traditional gender roles, Arthur paved the way for future generations of actresses. Her legacy is evident in the increasingly complex and diverse representations of women in film, a testament to her enduring impact on the industry. Arthur's reluctance to embrace the trappings of fame, coupled with her commitment to portraying strong, intelligent women, underscores the duality of her legacy. Off-screen, she was a private individual who shied away from the spotlight, yet on-screen, she represented a progressive vision of womanhood. This duality enriches Arthur's legacy, making her not just a celebrated actress of Hollywood's golden age, but also a pioneering figure in the evolution of women's representation in cinema. The transition to stage and television. Jean Arthur's transition from the silver screen to the stage and television marked a significant shift in her career, reflecting her desire to explore different facets of acting and to engage with new audiences. This chapter delves into the later part of Arthur's career, highlighting her notable stage performances and her role in the television series The Jean Arthur Show, underscoring her continued impact on the performing arts. After achieving considerable success in Hollywood, Arthur's career took a turn as she began to seek opportunities beyond film. Her move towards stage and television was driven by a combination of factors, including her well-documented discomfort with the Hollywood system and her desire for more challenging and diverse roles. Arthur's foray into theater was not just a departure from film, but a return to her roots. Before her Hollywood fame, she had experience in New York's theater scene, which had initially honed her acting skills. One of Arthur's most significant stage roles came in 1950, when she starred in the Broadway production of Peter Pan as Peter. Her performance was lauded for its energy and whimsy, capturing the eternal youthfulness of the character and showcasing Arthur's versatility as an actress. This role, among others, demonstrated Arthur's ability to captivate live audiences, just as she had film audiences, with her unique charm and talent. Arthur's transition to television was highlighted by The Jean Arthur Show in 1966, where she played a lawyer. The show was an attempt to capitalize on Arthur's enduring appeal, offering her a platform to reach a new generation of viewers. Despite the show's short run, it was a testament to Arthur's willingness to embrace new challenges and to adapt to the changing dynamics of the entertainment industry. Arthur's work in stage and television during the latter part of her career is indicative of her broader impact on the performing arts. She brought the same depth and nuance to her stage and television roles as she did to her film characters, challenging traditional gender roles and paving the way for future generations of actresses. Her characters often embodied strength, intelligence, and independence, contributing to evolving representations of women in cinema and beyond. Moreover, Arthur's transition highlights the fluidity between different mediums of acting, underscoring the idea that talent transcends the platform. Her ability to move between film, stage, and television with ease and success is a testament to her skill as an actress and her dedication to her craft. In examining the later part of Jean Arthur's career, we see a performer who was not content to rest on her laurels, but was driven by a passion for acting and a desire to explore the full range of her abilities. Her contributions to stage and television are an essential part of her legacy, showcasing her versatility and her continued relevance in the world of performing arts. The legacy of a reluctant star. Reflecting on Jean Arthur's enduring legacy in Hollywood requires an appreciation of her unique position within the pantheon of Golden Age cinema. Arthur's contributions to the film industry during her active years were profound, not only in terms of the memorable characters she brought to life, but also in how she navigated her career with a rare blend of integrity and talent. This chapter focuses on Arthur's impact on the film industry, her influence on contemporary actresses, and her lasting symbol as an exemplar of grace and professionalism in an industry often criticized for its excesses. Jean Arthur's legacy in Hollywood is anchored in her performances, which often broke the mold of traditional female roles. Her characters were strong, intelligent, and independent, embodying a modern woman who could stand on equal footing with her male counterparts. This was a significant departure from the more conventional portrayals of women in cinema at the time, making Arthur a forerunner in the evolution of female characters in Hollywood. Films like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and The More the Merrier not only showcased her talent, but also her ability to portray women of substance and complexity. Arthur's influence extends beyond the roles she played. Her approach to her career and her life in Hollywood set her apart. Known for her aversion to the limelight and her dedication to her craft, Arthur chose roles that resonated with her personally and professionally, rather than those that would merely elevate her star status. This principled approach to acting, coupled with her natural talent, made her a role model for actresses of her time and for generations to come. In the golden era of Hollywood, a lavish party was in full swing at the grand Beverly Hills home of Errol Flynn, the swashbuckling hero of the silver screen. The year was 1940, and Flynn, at the height of his fame, was known as much for his off-screen escapades as for his on-screen adventures. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the sound of clinking glasses as Hollywood's elite mingled under the starlit sky. But beneath the surface of this glittering spectacle lay a darker side to the charismatic actor. Flynn, with a drink in one hand and a mischievous glint in his eye, was the life of the party. However, his charm masked a penchant for trouble that often put him at odds with the law and the Hollywood establishment. On this particular night, as the party roared on, Flynn's behavior took a turn that would add yet another scandalous chapter to his already notorious reputation. As the story goes, Flynn, in a moment of drunken bravado, decided to play a prank on a fellow actor, a prank that would later be recounted in hushed tones among the Hollywood circles. He had smuggled a live tiger into the party, a wild and dangerous stunt that sent guests into a frenzy. The tiger, bewildered and scared, roamed the lavish halls, causing chaos and panic among the glamorous crowd. Flynn's laughter echoed through the mansion as he watched the spectacle unfold, seemingly oblivious to the danger and distress he had caused. This incident was emblematic of Flynn's approach to life, reckless, daring, and often crossing the line of decency. His actions that night were not just a display of poor judgment, they were a reflection of a deeper disregard for the consequences of his actions. Flynn's life was a series of such escapades, each more outrageous than the last, painting a picture of a man who lived by his own rules, regardless of the cost to himself or others. Flynn's behavior was often excused as the eccentricities of a genius, his charm and talent overshadowing his indiscretions. But to those who bore the brunt of his actions, he was a man whose charisma could quickly turn into callousness. His antics, though often dismissed as the follies of a Hollywood star, were indicative of a troubling pattern of behavior. As the night wore on and the party guests recovered from their initial shock, the incident with the tiger became yet another tale to be told about Errol Flynn, the charming rogue of Hollywood. But for those who looked closer, it was a stark reminder of the darker side of fame, a world where excess and arrogance were often mistaken for charm and charisma. This story of Flynn and his tiger is just one of many that illustrate the complex and often troubling nature of some of Hollywood's most iconic figures. As we delve deeper into the lives of these stars, we uncover a world where the glitz and glamour of the silver screen often masks the more troubling aspects of fame and fortune. From Flynn's wild escapades to the fiery temperament of Shelley Winters, the golden era of Hollywood was as much about the drama off-screen as it was about the stories told on it. Errol Flynn, the swashbuckling rebel. Born in Tasmania in 1909, Flynn's journey to Hollywood stardom was marked by a series of escapades that foreshadowed his future reputation. His early years were spent in Australia and Papua New Guinea, where he was known for his rebellious nature and love for adventure, traits that would later define his persona both on and off the screen. Flynn's arrival in Hollywood in the early 1930s was the beginning of a career that would make him one of the most iconic figures of the golden age of cinema. His breakthrough role in Captain Blood, 1935, catapulted him to stardom, and he quickly became synonymous with the roles of charming and daring heroes. However, it was his off-screen life that often captured the public's imagination just as much as his on-screen exploits. Flynn's Hollywood was a place of excess and extravagance, and he embraced this lifestyle wholeheartedly. He was known for his lavish parties, which were legendary for their opulence and the debauchery that often ensued. Flynn's home, Mulholland Farm, became a symbol of his extravagant lifestyle, a place where Hollywood's elite would gather to indulge in the hedonistic pleasures of the era. But Flynn's life was not just about parties and glamour. He was also known for his tumultuous personal life, including a string of high-profile romances and marriages. His relationships were often the subject of tabloid gossip, adding to his reputation as a Hollywood playboy. However, it was his trial for statutory rape in 1942 that brought his personal life into the public eye in a more serious and damaging way. Although he was acquitted, the trial tarnished his image and added a dark chapter to his story. Flynn's career in Hollywood was also marked by a constant struggle with the studios. He often clashed with studio executives over his roles and his desire for more creative control. His rebellious nature extended to his professional life, where he was not afraid to stand up to the powers that be, a trait that was both admired and frowned upon in the industry. Despite his personal and professional challenges, Flynn's talent and charisma kept him at the forefront of Hollywood. He continued to deliver memorable performances in films like The Adventures of Robin Hood, 1938, and The Seahawk, 1940. However, his lifestyle began to take a toll on his health. Flynn's later years were marked by a decline in his physical and mental well-being, exacerbated by years of alcohol and substance abuse. Errol Flynn's death in 1959 at the age of 50 was a tragic end to a life that had been lived in the fast lane. His legacy, however, lives on in the annals of Hollywood history. Flynn's life was a testament to the allure and dangers of stardom, a reminder of the thin line between the glamorous facade of Hollywood and the often tumultuous reality behind it. His story is one of talent, charm, and defiance, but also of excess, controversy, and the ultimate cost of fame. Tallulah Bankhead, Hollywood's wild card. With her husky voice, flamboyant personality, and unabashed approach to life, was a force to be reckoned with in Hollywood. Born into a prominent political family in Alabama in 1902, Bankhead's journey to stardom was as unconventional as her personality. She first made her mark on the New York stage before venturing into the world of Hollywood cinema. Bankhead's arrival in Hollywood in the 1930s was met with great anticipation. Known for her successful theater career, she brought a sense of sophistication and raw talent to the screen. However, it was her off-screen antics that often overshadowed her professional achievements. Bankhead was notorious for her wild parties, her quick wit, and her propensity for shocking the conservative sensibilities of the time. One of the most telling anecdotes of Bankhead's audacious nature occurred during the filming of Lifeboat, 1944, directed by Alfred Hitchcock. Known for her disdain for wearing undergarments, Bankhead reportedly refused to wear any during the shoot, much to the discomfort of her co-stars and the crew. When a complaint was made, Hitchcock famously quipped that he didn't know if the issue was a matter for the costume department, hair and makeup, or props. This incident was emblematic of Bankhead's devil-may-care attitude and her refusal to conform to Hollywood norms. Bankhead's personal life was as colorful as her public persona. She was openly bisexual at a time when such things were kept private, and her romantic escapades were the subject of much gossip. Her relationships, often with prominent figures, added to her reputation as a Hollywood maverick. Bankhead never shied away from speaking her mind, and her sharp tongue was both feared and admired in the industry. Despite her talent, Bankhead's film career never reached the heights of her stage success. She often clashed with studio executives and directors, and her unrestrained lifestyle led to reliability issues on set. Her outspoken nature and refusal to play by the rules made her a controversial figure in the industry. Bankhead's health suffered due to her excessive lifestyle, particularly her heavy smoking and drinking. These habits took a toll on her career and her well-being, leading to a decline in her health in her later years. Despite these challenges, Bankhead remained a beloved figure in the entertainment world, known for her indomitable spirit and her ability to light up a room. Marlon Brando, method acting or madness? Renowned for his groundbreaking acting and magnetic screen presence, was equally famous for his unpredictable and often difficult behavior. His approach to acting and his interactions on set left an indelible mark on Hollywood, but not always for the right reasons. Brando's method acting, which brought depth and realism to his performances, also came with a reputation for being challenging to work with. One of the most notable instances of his difficult behavior was during the filming of One-Eyed Jacks, 1961, which Brando directed and starred in. His perfectionism led to endless takes, significantly delaying the production and infuriating the crew. His insistence on exploring the psychological depths of his character often came at the expense of the production schedule and budget. Another infamous episode occurred on the set of The Godfather, 1972. Brando, known for his disdain for memorizing lines, would often improvise or require cue cards, leading to frustration among his co-stars and the film's director, Francis Ford Coppola. His unconventional methods, while resulting in an iconic performance, created tension and challenges during the filming process. Brando's behavior extended beyond the set as well. He was known for his activism and outspoken nature, which, while admirable, sometimes led to clashes with Hollywood's power structure. His famous refusal to accept the Academy Award for The Godfather in protest of Hollywood's portrayal of Native Americans was a bold statement, but it also alienated many in the industry. In Last Tango in Paris, 1972, Brando's on-set behavior was particularly controversial. The film's explicit content and Brando's approach to his role led to a significant backlash and raised ethical questions about the treatment of co-star Maria Schneider. The film remains a subject of debate, with Brando's methods being scrutinized for their impact on his young co-star. Brando's later career was marked by a reputation for being uncooperative and difficult to predict. His demands became increasingly eccentric, and his commitment to projects was often questioned. This behavior cost him roles and strained his relationships with directors and producers. Katharine Hepburn, the fierce independent. Known for her sharp wit and strong personality, was a Hollywood icon who often clashed with the industry's expectations, particularly for women. Her independent spirit, while admirable, sometimes manifested in ways that made her notoriously difficult to work with. Hepburn's refusal to conform to Hollywood standards extended to her behavior on set. She was known for her directness and unapologetic nature, which, while refreshing, often rubbed directors and co-stars the wrong way. Her insistence on having things done her way led to several high-profile conflicts. One notable incident occurred during the filming of The African Queen, a 1951. Hepburn's relationship with director John Huston was strained as their strong personalities clashed. Hepburn's insistence on her artistic vision and her uncompromising approach to her character created tension throughout the production. Her co-star, Humphrey Bogart, and Huston found her to be demanding and at times inflexible, which led to a challenging working environment. Hepburn's off-screen behavior was equally formidable. She was outspoken in her opinions and often clashed with studio executives over her roles and public image. Her refusal to partake in the traditional Hollywood publicity machine, including avoiding the press and red carpet events, was seen as rebellious and difficult. While this stance was rooted in her desire for privacy and authenticity, it was often perceived as aloofness or arrogance. Her personal life, particularly her long-term relationship with Spencer Tracy, was another area where Hepburn defied conventions. Despite Tracy being married, their relationship was an open secret in Hollywood. Hepburn's involvement with a married man was controversial, and her refusal to address or apologize for the situation added to her reputation as a Hollywood maverick. Despite these challenges, Hepburn's talent and on-screen charisma were undeniable. She delivered numerous acclaimed performances and won several Academy Awards. However, her path was not without its obstacles, largely due to her uncompromising nature and willingness to challenge the status quo. Orson Welles, genius or tyrant? Celebrated for his extraordinary talent and visionary work, was also notorious for his tyrannical behavior on set. His perfectionism and unyielding control over his projects often led to clashes with cast members, crew, and studio executives. Welles' directorial debut, Citizen Kane, 1941, is a prime example of his genius, but also of his difficult nature. His insistence on complete creative control and his unorthodox filming techniques were revolutionary but also created significant tension. Welles often disregarded studio schedules and budgets, prioritizing his artistic vision above all else. This approach, while resulting in a masterpiece, strained his relationships within the industry. His behavior on set was sometimes described as autocratic. Welles was known to demand numerous retakes until he achieved the perfect shot, a practice that exhausted and frustrated his actors and crew. His communication style was often direct and uncompromising, which, while effective in achieving his vision, was perceived as overbearing and insensitive. Welles' difficulties with Hollywood extended beyond the set. His battles with studio executives were legendary. After Citizen Kane, he faced constant interference from studios in his subsequent projects. His unwillingness to compromise often led to unfinished projects and a reputation for being unreliable. This tension with the studios hampered his career, leading to a decline in his opportunities in Hollywood. One of the most telling incidents of Wells' challenging behavior was during the production of The Magnificent Ambersons, 1942. His refusal to edit the film according to the studio's wishes led to a notorious conflict, resulting in the studio cutting and reshaping the film without his approval. This incident not only damaged his relationship with the studio, but also deeply affected Wells personally and professionally. Despite his undeniable talent, Wells' career in Hollywood was a constant battle for artistic freedom against the commercial constraints of the industry. His refusal to adhere to Hollywood norms, while admirable in its pursuit of artistic integrity, often manifested in ways that were considered arrogant and dictatorial. Shelley Winters, the fiery performer. Known for her powerful performances and Academy Award-winning roles, was equally famous for her fiery temperament and outspoken nature. Her strong personality often led to clashes with directors, co-stars, and studio executives, earning her a reputation as one of Hollywood's more challenging actors to work with. Winters' career was marked by several incidents where her forthrightness crossed into what many considered difficult behavior. One such instance occurred during the filming of A Place in the Sun, 1951. Winters, who was passionate about her role, frequently clashed with director George Stevens over her character's portrayal. Her insistence on playing the role her way led to tension on set, with Stevens finding her unyielding approach exasperating. Her off-screen behavior was equally notorious. Winters was known for her sharp tongue and lack of filter in interviews and public appearances, often speaking candidly about her personal life and her views on the industry. This openness, while refreshing to some, was seen as brash and unbecoming by others in the more conservative Hollywood circles. Winters' relationships with her co-stars were also a source of contention. She was known to be demanding and sometimes overbearing, expecting a level of commitment and intensity from her colleagues that not everyone was willing or able to give. This attitude, while stemming from her dedication to her craft, often resulted in strained working relationships. Despite these challenges, Winters' talent was undeniable. She delivered numerous memorable performances, including her roles in The Diary of Anne Frank, 1959, and A Patch of Blue, 1965. However, her difficult reputation followed her throughout her career, overshadowing her professional achievements to some extent. Shelley Winters' story in Hollywood is one of a fiercely talented actress who often let her strong personality overshadow her professional relationships. Her refusal to conform to the expectations of a female star in Hollywood was groundbreaking, but it also came with a cost. Charles Laughton, The Perfectionist's Edge. Acclaimed for his extraordinary talent and versatility, had a reputation in Hollywood that was as much about his difficult demeanor as it was about his acting prowess. His perfectionist nature often manifested in behavior that many found challenging and abrasive. Laughton's approach to his craft was meticulous and demanding, both of himself and those around him. This pursuit of perfection led to several notorious incidents on set. During the filming of Mutiny on the Bounty, 1935, Laughton, who played Captain Bligh, was known for his exacting standards and unrelenting criticism of his co-stars' performances, particularly towards co-star Clark Gable. His insistence on numerous retakes and his tendency to lecture fellow actors on their performances created a tense and often uncomfortable atmosphere on set. Another example of Laughton's difficult behavior was evident during the production of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, 1939. Laughton's method of immersing himself in the role of Quasimodo was intense and all-consuming. He demanded complete silence on set and would become irate at any disturbances, often berating crew members for the slightest noise. His temper was quick and fierce, leaving many to tread lightly around him. Laughton's directorial debut with The Night of the Hunter, 1955, further highlighted his challenging nature. His vision for the film was uncompromising, and he often clashed with the film's cinematographer and crew over the minutest details. His inability to communicate his exacting vision in a collaborative manner led to strained relationships and a fraught production process. Off the set, Laughton's personality was equally complex. He was known for his sharp wit and often cutting remarks. While he could be charming and gregarious, he could also be dismissive and scornful, particularly towards those he felt were not at his level of intellect or talent. This behavior, while partly a defense mechanism against his own insecurities, often alienated colleagues and acquaintances. Despite his undeniable talent, Laughton's career was undoubtedly affected by his reputation for being difficult. Many directors and producers were wary of working with him, not wanting to deal with the challenges he presented. His perfectionism, while yielding brilliant performances, often came at the cost of harmonious working relationships. Laurence Olivier, the demanding thespian. One of the most revered actors of his generation, known for his immense contribution to both stage and screen, had moments in his career that painted him as less than the consummate professional he was often portrayed to be. One such incident occurred during the production of Marathon Man, 1976, where Olivier's interactions with co-star Dustin Hoffman became a notable example of his difficult behavior. Hoffman, known for his method-acting approach, reportedly stayed up for days to look suitably exhausted for a torture scene. Olivier, upon learning this, famously quipped, "My dear boy, why don't you just try acting?" While often recounted as an amusing anecdote, this incident highlighted Olivier's disdain for certain modern acting techniques, which he sometimes expressed in a dismissive and condescending manner. Another instance of Olivier's challenging demeanor was during the filming of Wuthering Heights, 1939. Olivier, who played Heathcliff, was reportedly difficult and cold towards his co-star Merle Oberon, who played Kathy. His behavior was attributed to his belief that Oberon was not suited for the role, and he made no secret of his opinion, creating a tense and uncomfortable environment on set. Olivier's directorial stint in The Prince and the Showgirl, 1957, where he also starred alongside Marilyn Monroe, further showcased his demanding nature. Monroe, who was struggling with her own personal issues at the time, found Olivier's exacting standards and lack of empathy difficult to handle. Olivier was openly critical of Monroe's work ethic and acting ability, often expressing his frustration to the crew and cast. This tension was palpable throughout the production and affected the overall atmosphere on set. In his personal interactions, Olivier could also be imperious and aloof. His status as a theatrical legend sometimes translated into a superiority complex in his dealings with other actors and directors. While deeply respected for his craft, Olivier's interactions were not always marked by warmth or humility. Despite these instances, Olivier's contributions to the performing arts cannot be overstated. Marilyn Monroe, behind the glamour. Marilyn Monroe, the quintessential symbol of Hollywood glamour, faced numerous challenges behind the scenes that sometimes led to behavior perceived as unprofessional. While her struggles with mental health and addiction are well documented, there were instances on set that painted her in a difficult light. One of the most notable examples occurred during the filming of Some Like It Hot, 1959. Monroe's frequent tardiness and inability to remember lines caused significant delays. Director Billy Wilder, known for his patience, was pushed to his limits. Monroe would often require dozens of takes to get a scene right, leading to frustration among the cast and crew. Tony Curtis, her co-star, famously quipped that kissing Monroe was like kissing Hitler, a comment he later claimed was made in jest due to the stress of working with her. Another incident took place during the production of The Prince and the Showgirl, 1957, where her co-star and director Laurence Olivier became exasperated with her work ethic. Monroe's reliance on acting coaches, her lateness, and her difficulty with lines led Olivier to express his frustration openly, contributing to a tense atmosphere on set. Monroe's behavior was not limited to film sets. Her personal life was marked by volatility, including multiple marriages and affairs, some with high-profile figures. These relationships often spilled into her professional life, affecting her reputation and the way she was perceived in the industry. It's important to note, however, that Monroe's behavior was often a manifestation of deeper issues. She struggled with severe anxiety, depression, and the pressures of fame. Her upbringing and the exploitation she faced in Hollywood played significant roles in her personal struggles. The industry at the time was not equipped to deal with mental health issues effectively, often exacerbating the challenges faced by stars like Monroe. Despite these difficulties, Monroe's talent and charisma were undeniable. She delivered iconic performances and remains a beloved figure in Hollywood history. Giovanni Jackson, Daddy's Girl.